Years after leaving town to make it as a songwriter and musician on the East Coast, Mr. Hot himself, Jeff Statsky, has returned. Locals are simply stunned that Mr. Ambition himself would deign to move back to Pennington, the town he once said, quote, wasn't big enough for his music. Tuffy's Bar is even planning a welcome home party for the would-be Bob Dylan.
We got a nice cushioned stool for his precious little East Coast ass. Hey, Jeffy boy, we got the radio on. We're still waiting to hear that big song of yours. Where is it?
Local business owners say Statsky might have just as hard a time finding work here in Pennington as he did when he was trying to be a dainty little songsmith in Coolsville.
Oh, well, sure, I could set him up with a job, no sweat. Oh, wait, come to think of it, we don't have any openings right now for tambourine-shaking pansies who got dick-slapped by the big city.
This is the Onion News Network.
Got Telegram? You can follow our channel there and discuss show prep with other listeners at telegram.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
Welcome to Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control. It's 603-283-6160 to get in on the conversation with us here. That's 603-283-6160. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Coach Phil.
And Stu.
And in the first story we have to cover tonight, it's just completely ridiculous and terrifying and sad what happened to these people. There are these people, this couple that run an Instagram account called Peanut the Squirrel 12, and they seem to me like a couple, like family. They had this pet squirrel that was like a wild squirrel. Well, I don't know if there's domesticated squirrels really, but they domesticated this one. It's absolutely possible.
I believe they rescued it as a baby.
Yeah, when I was a kid, my mom got a squirrel baby out of the shed, and she would like bottle feed it every day. And eventually, when it got old enough, she just like worried about like what its life would be like. So she gave it to a wildlife rehabilitation center type place, and it was a really nice pet. It wasn't like crazed or anything. It's not like a lot of people say that raccoons, which is actually kind of funny because this couple also had a raccoon. A lot of people say that raccoons are like the type of animal that can't be domesticated very much, but like a skunk totally can. So there's, it's not that it's impossible to domesticate a squirrel. It's absolutely possible. But why are we talking about this? The cops came and raided their house, took their pet squirrel named Peanut, and euthanized it.
They murdered that squirrel.
What
Justice for Peanut.
I agree. They murdered it. Anybody else that broke into someone's house and held them, at gunpoint, went inside and grabbed their helpless animals and then took them somewhere and killed them would be treated like a psychopathic murderer in any other scenario.
I don't even understand what the justification for taking the squirrel. Is it because was this in New York City actually?
It's in New York, but actually I'm not sure if it was New York City.
Okay, I can't believe how they send a bunch. I heard they went deep into these people's houses to recover this squirrel, and they ended up taking a raccoon as well.
Yep, and I wasn't sure that if they killed the raccoon either, but you and your wife said that they did.
Yeah, that's what I hear, and it's on their Instagram page right now, and it does not make any sense. This squirrel, they have all kinds of videos with it. It seems to be well taken care of. Mm-hmm. Doesn't seem like a danger to anyone. But I mean, I think it all goes back to everything has to be some government needs to have responsibility of whatever happened. So I guess the justification from what I hear is if the squirrel attacked someone, then they'd be liable because the squirrel is a wild creature that can attack at any time.
I'm wondering how somebody goes to their job during the day, and then they come home at night and tell their wife and kids, "Oh, yeah, what did I do today? I kidnapped a squirrel from some family that loved it and then killed it."
I know. That's just so crazy.
I would be quite ashamed of myself.
I feel like these people go home and they justify it to their families, and then, like, especially if you're a kid and your dad is telling you that he had to do this, like, most people as kids would be convinced by their own, like, father or mother that, like, they did something right because they just can't imagine their parents doing something wrong. But what about, your grown adult spouse or parents or other people you live with?
People twist things around to make wrong things seem right all the time. And they just hold a certain amount of cognitive dissonance, or controlled schizophrenia, as I like to call it.
Yeah, I can't imagine any scenario where you go and explain this to your loved ones and they think you did something good. Luckily, the internet, or not luckily, but at least the internet is like pretty much up in arms about this. Like, it's not just libertarians that are mad about this. Just this post here that says R.I.P. Peanut the squirrel, with the family crying and talking about it here. It had 76,000 likes and people saying that this is heartbreaking and it doesn't make any sense. It's just some random ones I'm seeing right here. Like, WTF, they took him and euthanized him. This is so cruel. Stuff like that. Like, so it's not just libertarians that are upset about this particular thing that the cops did. Oftentimes it's just libertarians that are upset about something, but I don't even blame people for this. But a lot of times when the victim is an animal instead of a person, a lot of people can sympathize a lot more.
Absolutely.
And I really don't blame them. Some people hate that fact.
Well, that attaches to a lot of people get upset. Like, if you could torture a child, and you'd probably get less hate than if you tortured a puppy. So, there's that.
I still think children get more sympathy than adults. So it works like this. It's mostly like a puppy that hasn't bit someone hierarchy is really like the thing that's going to make the most people mad, I think, because it's like there's no possible way it's guilty of anything. Then a child, I know it's literally not guilty of anything, but you can at least imagine it like lying. Like, a puppy couldn't possibly do anything wrong except like bite someone. But anytime a dog bites someone and gets put down, there's crazy people that think that that's not okay. But most people, I would think, say that's okay.
Yeah, I think that. But this is just this is crazy to me that they just go into the people's house. Their squirrel's well taken care of. The squirrel seems to be a part of the family. And the state wants authority over every aspect of your life.
And before anybody twists, what I was saying wasn't saying that it's more right to kill a child than kill a squirrel. I'm kind of sympathetic of why people feel so much worse about it. It's because, like, something that could not defend itself in any stretch of the imagination, like a squirrel.
Well, there's a hierarchy of sympathy. There you got, at top you have puppies, and then
then there's babies and then children, Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I don't know. It seems like some people have babies lower on the end of the sympathy
than children,
because they scream and cry.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I just think it depends on how impossible is it for this being to defend itself or do anything wrong. Both those things, like, combined.
Well, maybe this would be a good platform to bring people to understand how ridiculous government involved in every aspect of your life is. But there's been other things before where people don't see the connection. They'll see, this is awful that government's doing this, but it's great that they're doing that.
We need a government group of people that goes around to make sure this doesn't happen again, instead of just a normal group of people that ensures, like, people all having guns. That would be more likely to ensure that something like this doesn't happen than for there to be a task force running around and they're the only people allowed to have guns, and they're responsible for making sure this kind of thing doesn't happen. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, that could be one thing. It's just okay. So if we get people to be like, okay, this is ridiculous that government's in this aspect of our life. We should be able to have all the pets we want, blah, blah, blah. But then you'll have other people who will justify government having a say on what you can say online. I'm kind of stretching here, but I mean, it's just, you could draw a line for people. Some people will see it where if you let government into your life here, they're going to keep advancing until they...
Well, does the story say how all of this came about? Were they applying for a permit to keep their squirrel, or did the neighbors call the cops on them?
I think somebody was saying this to me today, but I haven't read the whole thing yet. Somebody said that it was their neighbors. So let's get into it. This is from thetravel.com. It says, Peanut the squirrel euthanized by New York State authorities. Longo family devastated. That's their last name. It says on Wednesday, October 30th, authorities from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, wow, you're totally conserving the environment like this, forced themselves into the family home of Mark Longo in Pine City, New York, in search of Longo's pet squirrel, Peanut. Numerous malicious and anonymous calls to the DEC, that's the Department of Environmental Conservation, led authorities to take inhumane actions towards Mark, raiding his home with a warrant while making him wait outside for several hours as they ransacked everything, seizing Peanut and another wildlife pet raccoon named Fred, taking both with them. And I like that they used the word, they took inhumane actions towards Mark, because that is literally true. You usually don't see, like, when you're seeing somebody being described as a victim of the state, like that they acted in an inhumane way towards them. It's like they only use the word inhumane to animals most of the time. But they were inhumane to this man and his girlfriend. 2. Says on Friday, November 1st, the New York State DEC advised the press in a statement that both Peanut and Fred had been euthanized while being tested for rabies, claiming that Peanut bit someone involved in the investigation, prompting them to murder the innocent squirrel immediately. That's not okay. You kidnapped him from his home. Of course he bit you.
Well, and any animal you take from their home, they're going to bite you.
The
squirrel has no clue what's going on. It's a well taken care of squirrel. But I do believe that the attention was brought on the family because they have an Instagram page. I think it's fairly popular with the squirrel. Like, the squirrel was part of their family. And they just, it's no different than having any other pet. But, the government has to protect you. Oh, we got to cut open its head. We have to see if it has rabies.
So
it's probably just some Karen in Department of Making Things Bad that saw their post and decided to make it a thing.
Of course.
It mentioned there being more than one. It said numerous calls. But yeah, a lot of the times the type of person that do that works for the government. Like in a friend's case who had DCYF, which is the New Hampshire version of CPS, Child Protective Services. They had a case brought against them with those people, and the person who called the cops on them literally worked for the prosecution's office.
Yep.
That's just crazy. I feel like people who work for the government shouldn't be allowed to vote and shouldn't be allowed to bring a whole bunch of different charges against people.
I think people shouldn't be allowed to work for the government.
Yeah, well, that's obviously true too, but as long as we have that, like, that would be such an obvious step in my opinion, that why are they allowed to vote? Like, it's a conflict of interest, and why are they allowed to do things like work for a prosecution's office and also call the cops on people? And that they will know, they literally know how it works. They know that case will go to their prosecution's office where they work, and that they can have leverage to, like, tell them to take the case. That's crazy.
Well, then you also have the people who they would call just because they want to see everything burn. And there's a lot more of those people now, especially with, everyone has access to social media. So, there's a group of people, they SWAT different places all the time, and they'll just do things just to create chaos because it seems to be a hobby for people now.
There's probably a lot of people that looked at their page, and I totally agree that they probably have more eyes, or since they have more eyes on them with their Instagram page, and lots of people have Instagram pages for their pets, like their more quote-unquote normal pets, like dogs and cats. Lots of people have that. And for their kids and everything, like, people run accounts for their family members and pets that are, like, cute, and put things in, like, at the caption is in their words and stuff like that, just funny things. And then they'll have, like, huge followings. I follow some dogs. I think I even follow a cat. Yeah, I follow a cat on Twitter. Anyways, so
I'm not opposed to following cats and dogs.
So if you have like a lot of eyes on you, I think you're right. There's some people that are just like crazy. Like we live in a society that's just getting crazier and crazier, and it's like the government gives them an outlet to like harm people while being anonymous. Literally, it said like the calls were anonymous, at least some of them.
Well, I mean that happened during COVID when they had the anonymous tip lines where you can call in your neighbors. I mean,
yeah.
I was working out. I train kids and athletes who are getting ready for sports, and someone called the cops on us for running drills in the park. And I had permission slips from their parents. They were there, and someone called the cops, and the cops told us.
What state was that?
This was in California. It was in San Francisco, actually. And the cops came and told us we had to leave.
Wow. A friend or a lady I met the other day, she lived in Germany during 2020, and she said that neighbors were just like calling the cops on neighbors. I don't remember the exact scenario she told me or anything, but like she had her friend had her mom come to visit her and like kind of sneak over, and the cops came to her house and questioned her about it because like her neighbor called the cops on for just seeing through their window that, oh, they have someone over. That's so disgusting and awful.
Oh, don't worry that Nancy Pelosi made sure to get her hair cut, and Gavin Newsom, they opened the restaurant for him. Not for us regular folk, but Gavin Newsom made sure to get his dinner.
Some of them went to like the beach while it was like closed off to anyone else, stuff like that.
Oh, for sure. It's the old rules for us, not them.
This is so disgusting that the squirrel was in such fear that it bit someone. It's not like it was just commonly biting people. It bit someone when a kidnapper came and grabbed it from its house, and it didn't know what was going on. And they killed it for that.
Well, I feel like they were going to do it. I mean, they used that as an excuse. So
right.
They wouldn't get the wrath of the public.
Yeah, they still should.
Yeah.
It says their announcement, the quote-unquote cops or whatever that did this, of the decision to end the lives of 2 innocent animals was not provided to the Longo family first, but instead the announcement was revealed to the media. In an Instagram post earlier this morning, the Longo family shared a video of Fred the raccoon announcing his and Peanut's unjust ending to their lives, expressing how the DEC's actions in revealing the deaths of the animals to the media before contacting the owners showed a troubling lack of respect and empathy. They have done lots of things in this scenario that show that. One thing about it is they took them to test them for rabies, quote unquote. And I think you started to get into something important about that is like this DEC, Department of Environmental Conservation. It's probably, I mean, like people who believe in the government believe that it exists, that their tax money goes to it to keep them safe and also apparently conserve the environment. So,
well, I mean, like I hear things all the time where people are like, we need the government to do stuff for us. They're gonna lower. I the whole. I watched this interview with Kamala Harris, whatever her name is, and she was talking about we're gonna lower grocery prices. We're gonna build affordable housing. Government doesn't do any of that. So how? And then she doesn't go into how they're gonna do it. And then Trump promises all these things too. Just. People assume that government's going to make their lives better. There's people right now who are thinking if the other guy wins, our life's going to be ruined and we're going to lose everything. Like there's people who legitimately believe that. And I mean, nothing has a government official ever made your life better.
I don't think people are counting on government to make their lives better. They're just counting on them to not make it worse because America has become very much like the spoiled child that has way too many toys and none of it's good for them. And they're just worried that mom and dad are going to take something away.
No, 100%. These people think that government's going to make their lives better.
I think that
they think it's going to lower the grocery prices. They think it's going to stop inflation. People don't even realize what inflation is. People think it's higher prices. They don't realize that all the dollars they created during COVID, that's why there's inflation now. People don't, and then you tell them, people don't understand. Like,
yeah. I asked my dad a couple years ago if he knew what fractional reserve lending was, and he's like, "No, I have no idea."
Oh yeah.
That's how we got here.
I definitely think there's tons and tons of people that believe, especially it seems like, on both sides, it seems like there are definitely also leftists who believe that Kamala is going to make their lives better somehow, but there's also mostly people that believe that the other side's going to make their lives worse, and I completely am one of those people. I think that the leftists are going to noticeably make my life worse than the righties will in this moment. And the FBI was investigating Ian for like 5 years. They jumped on my house less than 2 months after Biden got into office. I just can't think that's a coincidence. Every single person that got up on the stand for the FBI was a woman, like blue-haired, obvious leftist, crazy woman. And I'm not saying that only men can be like not retarded. I'm just saying that like way more of the people with a like girl boss job like that are women that are women are leftists. And they were just obviously leftists. You can tell when somebody goes up there with a Tinkerbell haircut and tries to act like a man and is a leftist.
Well, they believe that's what's empowering, to act like a man and throw around their way. Oh, we're going to get that evil man.
Yeah.
And it just, this whole, that whole case was just disgusting in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, you saw it every day firsthand. And just, people just need to start to realize that government's not going to save you. It's not going to make your life better. No matter who you vote for. Your vote doesn't matter as much as you like to think, oh, I live in Pennsylvania, I'm going to change the election. No, you're not. I
think that one person's vote can't matter, but if you're like part of a group in a way and you're telling those people like this is the vote that will be more impactful for all of us to vote for, and you're changing people's minds, then that matters. Because it's like, yeah, one vote literally can't change anything. I also don't really believe that, just because the Electoral College exists, then your votes by definition can't matter at all, because every Electoral College person ever has voted with what their constituency voted for.
That's not true. There have been bad faith votes. There have been bad faith votes, or votes that go against their constituency in the Electoral College.
Well, then we should look it up on the. We should look it up, because I've always heard that there never has been.
I'd like to know that. That would be.
Yeah, I'd like to know too. But we can do it during the break. I'll write it down. But I always believed that there hadn't been, if the listeners weren't sure what I was saying.
And these bad faith votes may not have ever decided a presidential campaign, but I know there have been, like somebody, for example, who was expected to vote for one of the major parties ended up voting for a third party candidate.
I think that you're right about that. It sounds familiar now that there has been like somebody that voted third party, but it was because, or it didn't change what you're saying, exactly what you're saying. It didn't change the outcome. Like they were like one of the last people to do it. So they were like, in fact, I think Ian told me about this. It might've been libertarian. So.
Yep. And I don't really have any evidence to back this up, but I have a hunch that the whole thing is very much like WWE and fully scripted. Because Trump was a proud Democrat until 2017, and then suddenly he's a Republican and he's going to save the world.
Yeah, but he talks about all that stuff. It's not like he lies that he wasn't a Democrat or anything like that, or that he's really changed a whole lot of positions. Like he's still pro-choice. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live, and more is coming up. Don't go anywhere. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live.
So the protection of life, liberty, and property is what the Free State Project is all about. But it's an effort to move 20,000 people who understand.
It's about demonstrating to the entire country
that, yeah, we can have a free market, a truly free market.
Making it just a freer, great place to live.
It's the world's largest voluntarist libertarian community, and it's only getting bigger.
That's amazing, to be able to move to a place where other people passionately believe in being free and independent.
What the Free State Project is managing to do, though, is to put their money where their mouth is. It's physically getting up across the country and saying, let's go someplace and let's demonstrate the power of these ideas. There's a lot of kind of philosophy that surrounds liberty. There's a lot of thinking about it and talking about it. But here in New Hampshire, people are doing it.
101 Reasons Liberty Lives in New Hampshire, a documentary by Free State Project Early Movers. Watch it free at 101reasonsfilm.com. 101reasonsfilm.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave with the Week in Review. Donald Trump has conjured up a violent fantasy about one of his most vocal critics being shot. The former US president and White House hopeful said Liz Cheney, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, should be fired upon, describing her as a war hawk. Ms. Cheney is a former United States Congresswoman from Trump's own Republican Party, but she's endorsed the Democratic Party nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris, in next week's election. Benji Hire reports from Washington.
Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face.
Donald Trump has been called a fascist by his own former chief of staff, and he's described by Kamala Harris as a petty tyrant who's incited violence and is obsessed with revenge. Liz Cheney has hit back at Trump's remarks too, suggesting, quote, "This is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death." Trump also suggested without evidence that he's on course for victory, laying the groundwork to falsely claim fraud again if he loses.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has confirmed some 8,000 North Korean troops have been deployed to Russia's Kursk region to take part in the war against Ukraine. Megumi Lim reports from Kyiv.
Ukrainian forces continue to hold several hundred square kilometers of territory in Russia's Kursk region after their surprise incursion in August, but Russian forces have been clawing back some ground. Blinken said Russia has been training North Korean soldiers in artillery, drones, and basic infantry operations, including trench clearing, which suggests they will likely be used for frontline combat. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged Western allies to provide additional support for Ukraine as it braces for another country to enter the war. He said Russian President Vladimir Putin was testing the world's reaction by sending North Korean troops to the Russia-Ukraine border. Megumi Lim in Kyiv.
From Friday, hospitals in Texas are required to ask patients about their citizenship status. Tony Waterman has more.
The mandate doesn't require people to answer the question of whether they're in the U.S. legally, and hospitals are adamant that regardless of the answer, patient care will not change. But critics fear that even the slightest risk of immigration enforcement could scare people away from getting the care that they need. Texas has the highest rate of uninsured residents in the U.S., double the national average, but many of them are citizens. Hospitals will have to start submitting their data in March, and Governor Abbott says he will seek reimbursement from the federal government.
And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News.
Our Matrix server is about as free as internet chat can be. Join the existing rooms or create your own at chat.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency made for spending. You can pay your bills with Dash at spritz.finance. Plus, they can send dollars to your bank if you still need those for something. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month for this sponsorship. It's easy to get and use Dash. You can learn more at dash.org. That's dash.org. And the number again is 603-283-6160. You can call in with whatever's on your mind. Tell us your opinions on what we're talking about or change the subject. It's up to you. With you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Coach Phil.
Oops, I have you muted, sorry.
Oh, it's Coach Phil.
And Stu.
Sorry about that for censoring you guys. So in the last segment, I said I was going to look something up, and I was wrong about exactly what I said because I had mixed some stuff up in my head. but there have been like many instances where the electoral college person in your district, whatever you want to call it, county, voted for a different person than what you voted for or abstained. As of the 2020 election, there were a total of 165 instances of faithlessness, but that counts president and vice president. That counts if they abstained, and nearly all either voted for a third-party candidate or a non-candidate, as opposed to switching their support to a major opposing candidate, and none of them have changed the outcome of the election. So it's almost like it's like a, what's the word, activism to them.
Well, I remember the old Ron Paul stealth delegates, and didn't they
That's
change
the
the
one.
rules because of that? I believe they did.
I just forgot that happened, and Ian's the one that told me about the ones that voted for Ron Paul. So like, there were some delegates that actually voted for Ron Paul, but it was like activism to them. That's crazy. But I don't know what kind of, like, do you have any memory of like what kind of rules they changed?
I really don't remember. I do remember that because of the stealth delegates that they were trying to change the rules, and I believe they did. I wish I had it right in front of me. We could probably look that up during the break.
Yeah. So in the beginning of the in the last segment, we were talking about this. I almost said this peanut named squirrel. It's a squirrel. It was a live squirrel. It almost looks like a black squirrel. It looks really dark in color. Named Peanut, and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation probably used cops because, like, do they carry guns? How did they force themselves into this family's home? They went into a family's home in Pine City, New York, brought out his pet squirrel, Peanut, and his pet raccoon, Fred, took them with them, and then a few days later, the family found out only via the news that they had killed their squirrel. He looks like a really dark colored squirrel, but maybe not black.
Well, no, I think it is a black squirrel. Those actually come from Germany. They're actually, they were brought over, and they're big in Council Bluffs, Iowa, and Omaha, Nebraska.
Can they just be dark? Because me and Ian saw one in this neighborhood.
There are black squirrels, like actual black squirrels. I think they've probably made their way out this way by this point, but yeah, they're originally from Germany, but I remember the first time I saw one, I was like, wow, this is crazy. I've never seen a black squirrel before.
Yeah.
But they do exist.
It was kind of funny because, like, me and Ian took walks all the time when he wasn't in prison, and one day we're walking, he was like, what was that? That was like a squirrel, but it was really dark, like black, and I was like, whatever, you're just seeing. And then, like, we walked past, I didn't see it. Then the next day we walked in the same area, and that black squirrel was over there, still in the, like, same area hanging out. So I actually saw it.
Yeah, they're pretty neat. I mean, they got black squirrels, they got regular squirrels, but is this one right here was murdered by the New York.
Yeah, New York Conservation. Wait, the New York, Department of Environmental Conservation, the DEC. Yep, he was murdered, and there's no other way to put it. There were some robbers that went into these people's house, held them, at gunpoint, because that's kind of the thing when somebody forces you out of your house and you have to wait outside. The threat is if you were to rush in, they will kill you. And they took out 2 of their pets and then brought them far away. They didn't know what was going on with their own pets or have any control over what was happening to them, and then the people killed them. They murdered them. So they said that after learning that the DEC had euthanized Peanut and Fred via media outlets, Mark Longo and his wife Daniela shared the devastating news on the famed squirrel's Instagram page in a very emotional video post to his followers, advising of Peanut's unnecessary death. The family heartbroken in losing their best friend.
All right. I'd like to hear other people's opinions on this, so if you want, give us a call.
Yeah. I think, like on the internet, lots of people are upset about this.
Yeah, I'm having a kind of a hard time feeling really bad for the squirrel. I feel bad for the owners because they didn't, like they were just posting on the internet and somebody saw it.
I feel bad for both of them.
And next thing you know, somebody shows up. That's horrible. I feel bad for the squirrel. I feel bad for any animal that's mistreated.
I think the thing with the squirrel is that it was like comfortable and happy in a house.
I wonder if the squirrel domesticated itself to them, like if it wandered in, or if they trapped it and forced domesticated it.
I'm on their page right now. It was brought in as a baby. It would have died without some kind of intervention. So I mean, like, people do it all the time. Like, I mean, I remember I did it as a kid. There was a little bird.
Yep.
On the
I found
ground.
a mouse one time. Same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's actually a good lesson for kids. If there's an animal that, a baby that's left alone.
Especially birds, because their moms can't put them back in the nest, and they abandon them if they're out of the nest too young.
Exactly.
So they will die.
And I mean, sometimes they do die. I mean, I'm sure I've known people like who've found an animal, tried to nurse it back to health, and it dies, and that's a good lesson for kids.
Yeah, nature's kind of brutal like that, and death is a part of life too.
And that's kind of the thing, like, every pet is kind of like forced in a way. Like, they don't have human rights. So, like, can you talk to my dog Coconut and ask him if he wants to be here? Not really. Like, I think you can assume he wants to be here by the way he acts, but some people's dogs will run away and not turn around if you open the front door. Like, you could use that as proof they don't want to be here and just take their dog, but I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I don't know if I would go that far as to say that either.
What?
That a runaway animal means that it doesn't want to be there.
I wouldn't say that either, or use that as proof either, but just
I have raised rabbits for meat for a couple of years, and I can tell when there's a rabbit that wants to be in the cage and a rabbit that doesn't. Some of them like it just fine, and some of them are not happy in there.
I can see that because Jay Noon's, his rabbits, they like really like when people pet them and stuff, and they like to be around people. But I could see them being like, I know what's going on.
Well,
I don't know.
With Peanut here, they've had this squirrel for 7 years. I'm on the page right now, 7 years. And it's basically just people on the internet being, the horrible, negative people that are out there called in, and they reported this squirrel. And of course, the state, they can't just let it go and see that the squirrel's well taken care of. Look at this squirrel. He's got a cowboy hat on.
Oh my God.
Look at how adorable
the
this
people in the
is.
watching
pretty
videos
darn cute.
Can't really see it right now, but they can go to it's peanut_the_squirrel12 if they want to see the squirrel.
Yeah, and they put out a statement. They're just basically saying, I'm going to read a little bit of this. It said, "Well, internet, you won. You took one of the most amazing animals away from me because of your selfishness. And to the group of people who call DEC, there's a special place in hell for you." And they're raising money right now. You can go to the page and donate. They're trying to start a nonprofit animal rescue in Peanut's name.
Oh, see, that's a really good thing to do. I fear that they're going to just like ask the government for permission to rehabilitate animals with their thing they're going to start. So I probably won't give money to it or anything, but
they
should sue.
They already have it. It's called Peanuts Freedom Farm.
Yeah. By the way, knowing that that's the only life that animal ever knew does make me feel more bad for it. That's pretty tragic.
Yeah. Because exactly. It's like it got taken away from the only thing it knew. It's not been reported that it's ever bit anyone before, and then it bites the people that have taken it, and it's only been with for 2 days. Like, it just makes me think it was probably like really freaking out.
Oh, I don't even believe that it even bit anyone.
Yeah, I guess that's also a thing.
Of course, they need to have an excuse, because they're gonna get the fire of the public. And if they go, well, we had to because it bit one of our agents who were there just doing their job.
What are you saying? That people that would rob and murder would also lie?
Oh, no. Never.
The other thing is, why did they put down Fred if Peanut bit them?
Well,
it doesn't make any sense.
I feel like they were going to do it anyways, and that just gave them an excuse so they wouldn't face the ire of the public.
I think that you're probably onto something there, and I wonder if this article will actually say why they killed Fred, but I don't see it so far. They wrote it says like lots of people are angry about this, and like most people on the internet are talking about how angry they are about it. But on the other side of the spectrum, a wildlife rehabilitator with the Wild Bird Fund, who also rehabilitates injured squirrels, expressed her thoughts in a CBS News interview. People have good intentions, but it is typically illegally and very unethical to keep a wild animal as a pet, she said. They live in trees. That's what they're meant to be in, a tree. Not indoors, so just kill them, I guess.
No, that's ridiculous.
Stupid. You can say dogs are meant to be outdoors.
Yeah, humans are meant to be in caves.
Oh,
yeah. It's stupid.
I mean, why are we in houses? We should be in our caves.
And it annoys me so bad when somebody uses the legality of a situation to speak on the ethics of it, because what she believes is that if something's illegal, that is because the higher powers higher than her made it illegal because it is immoral. And that's not how things work. Something is illegal only if a crazy person writes it down as something that the people they find to be beneath them shouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, legality has nothing to do with morality.
Right.
But I guarantee you, if you ask 10 people on the street, you're going to get 8 people who think that legality has something to do with morals.
I think 8 is generous.
Well, I mean,
I think you'd get 10.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I'll give an example. I mean, me personally, I don't want alcohol or drugs near my house. I don't care if it's legal or illegal. But people like, well, marijuana is legal now, or cannabis, whatever you want to call it. I don't want to be around it. I don't want it in my house. I'm not going to allow it in my house. But I also think that you, in your own, in your own property, wherever you want to be, you're allowed to. You can go do that. I don't care if you want to sniff bleach, drink bleach, for all I care. But I mean, people equate that because it's legal now that they should be able to do it wherever they want, whenever they want. And, I mean, I'm just talking about my personal space.
Yeah. So nobody should be able to go into your house and do anything you don't want. But that doesn't mean that you have the right and you don't claim the right to force anybody else to stop doing it outside of your house.
But I mean, there are people who think because they don't agree with something, they want it illegal.
Yep.
I mean, there's a ton of that.
Like this?
Yeah, like this. This is one thing, but I mean, it goes into, I think when I was a kid, I mean, I think it's flipped now, but like the Republican, like the conservatards, they were big on censoring people and they want to ban things that are bad for the children. And I feel like it's flipped now. Now it seems like it's the libtards who are all about, we need to ban things, but then they're gaslighting. Like I've heard things like if Donald Trump, of all people, Donald Trump, who's like definitely he's there. Okay, if anyone wants to check out the video, there's a video of Donald Trump simulating oral sex at his last rally. If anyone wants to check it out, but that guy's gonna ban books. They're talking about if Donald Trump gets in office, they're going to ban books.
They also never define banning books correctly. Like, just because a public school system doesn't put them into the library isn't the same thing as like a book burning by the government. Like, actually taking and banning the populace from being able to read a book.
Well, I mean, and then I saw this thing because they had a bunch of parents at a meeting, like a town hall meeting. And one of the parents was up there reading the book word for word. And then the lady in charge was like, you stop now. That's inappropriate. Mm-hmm. Yet he was reading something that was found in a junior high library.
Maybe it was maybe she called it inappropriate because of like the filibustering, or I don't know.
No, it was due to the content. It was pretty racy. It's debatable what should be.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean.
Oh no, Okay, the thing is, I don't believe in public schools, so I'm not really commenting on what should be in a public school, but there's lots of things that are found in public school libraries that I personally think shouldn't be around kids, but not that I would make it illegal, just that if I had a kid or if my little brother was still staying with me, he wouldn't be under my watch reading it, etc. For example, but yeah, so if that's what you're going to say, I agree with that. And I also just think that if somebody wants to let their kid read a book I find racy, they should be allowed to.
Agreed. I mean, and then kids are going to find it anyways. I mean, when I was that age, I mean, I feel like it's even easier now because I guess when I was that age, it was like the 2000s and you had a lot a lot of things were there and available to us, but they're even more available now. And we found a way. We found a way around. Our parents tried to block us from finding things. We found it.
I feel like a lot of people use that as some kind of a point when, like, I didn't want to think about that stuff, care about that stuff, know about, if we're talking about, like, sex, until I was, like, 17.
Oh, I mean, we found the live leak videos. I mean, it's not just sex.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, you remember the, what was his name? The journalist Daniel Pearl? Is that his, something Pearl? He got his head chopped off.
Oh, that, yeah. I would not be interested in that even more.
There's so many things. Maybe it was even more available when I was a kid.
That was probably so, like, traumatic to so many kids that accidentally saw that.
Sure.
Or, you know, their friends were like, look at this, because I would not want to see that.
Yeah, I don't want to ban it, but I mean, there's stuff out there that kids are going to find it. I think that's basically my point.
Mm-hmm.
But are we going to condone it by putting it in a school library? But I also agree with you. Why are you sending your kids to public school?
Don't send your kids to school. That's abusive.
What do you think about the book banning conversations, Stu?
Yeah, it's hard to care when I don't think anybody should be in a public school.
Exactly.
Anyways, that's not an institution fit for humans.
It's really hard to convince these, like, right-wingers specifically, even in New Hampshire, that, like, whenever they're complaining about something the public school is doing, there are libertarians, like good libertarians, trying to reach out to them and be like, hey, the problem is get your kids out of public schools. And Jay Noon, I'm in a chat with him right now where the parents are really against, like, the girls' soccer teams playing against other soccer teams that have trans kids, so basically biological boys on the team. So they're against that. And maybe Jay Noon agrees with that. It doesn't really matter. But he goes in there and he's like, yeah, this is all crazy. The solution is get your kids out of public schools. And if your kid is one of the soccer players and you don't want them playing against a trans kid, put them in a private league, etc. And they just, like, they can't wrap their mind around it. They get, like, super angry at him and they're like, that's not the solution, man. It's like seeing
that is the solution.
Well, the one thing is, though, you'd have to have a league that could compare to what you get at public school.
If you don't have one, go make a league.
Well,
just put up signs and make a league. It's not that hard to organize and make one.
And that's the thing.
There are lots of kids that want to play soccer. If there aren't, then you're not going to have friends to play soccer with anyways.
And the other thing is,
the market
like,
will decide.
You're saying those things being compared. Well, if enough parents pull their kids out of the public school ones, wouldn't, like, things adjust?
Well, it would be great, but I mean, realistically, I'm an athlete. I played Division I football. I coach football. I've coached kids who are at Division I schools right now, and without some kind of, I mean, everything's tied up. Okay, with football, everything's tied up with college and high school, so it's a pipeline. So let's say I wanted to opt out, okay, we're going to start a new league. I mean, there would have to be a radical change in how things are done, which would be great.
Well,
but
the ability to play team sports is not a justification for abuse of children.
Oh, of course not. But I understand where they're coming from when it comes to, you know, just as an athlete, I could care less. I learned. I'm getting my master's degree. I've learned. I don't think I learned a thing in school. I work with high school kids. I worked at a public school. I coached at a private school. So, I mean, I did that.
They don't care if you learn anything there. Lots of kids graduate high school without being able to read. They care what you learn is compliance.
Go sit in a lecture in college where people are paying to be there and just listen to what people are saying.
I tried college for a minute and they gave me the college introduction course and I was like, wait a minute, you guys are just going to extend my childhood forever? No thanks, and I was out of there.
That was so what it was like my one 100%. Semester. Sorry, no, go ahead. I was just going to agree it was like more high school.
Oh, 100%. And a lot of these people, I mean, a lot of these kids don't know why they're there. They're there, I mean, you know, we're going to catch the party. I mean, but the thing is, like,
they're extending their childhood.
Oh, of course. But the thing is, if you look at the way society is now, everything is extending your childhood. I mean,
yeah, they want to extend it right up until you're in the casket.
Oh, for sure. I mean, from cradle to the grave. But the thing is, like, it used to be where your job as a parent is to get your kids ready to live without you. And now it's like, oh, I want to protect my kid as long as I can. And then when I get them into the world, there's parents bringing their kids to job interviews.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, like when you're
That's fine if your kid's 12.
Yeah, if your kid's 12, exactly. I left home at 16. I was on my own at 16 years old. I was living with, you know, kids who were a little older in college. And I mean, if it wasn't, I mean, that's the one thing when I talk about sports got me through everything. Like, honestly, no one would care about me when I was that age if I didn't play sports. And I like, it opened doors for me. So I understand where a lot of kids who don't have the resource, they don't have the parents, they don't have things that to figure out how to do things in life. Sports are an outlet. And how do we get sports out of school and into a private league? Maybe
I think just because something is hard doesn't mean that it's impossible, or that like just because something is the way it is now doesn't mean it can't ever change. And the other thing is, well, if you just mean like, well, some kids are poor, charities. And then if you, like, my cousin was super poor growing up. She grew up with our grandparents because her parents were, you know, like drug addicts. And she had an anonymous benefactor send her to a prep school instead of like the terrible school she was going to have to go to that like my mom and all of her siblings had to go to that was like horrible and just getting worse and worse. And like that really helped her future out a whole lot more. Like she got into the University of Alabama. But I'm just saying like that was like a one-time thing, but there could be so much more charity going on if people weren't forced at gunpoint to pay their property taxes so that public schools could exist.
And I know they get a bad rap, but I worked at a Catholic school here in New Hampshire, and they do great things with bringing kids in. They have a lot of immigrants, a lot of kids who don't have the resources. So I mean, you got a combination of rich kids and kids who have nothing.
Wow.
And one of the kids I worked with, he's doing great now, and he's like an all academic kid right now at a major university, and without, you know, getting that assistance, I don't think he would have got there.
Yeah. That's really cool. I didn't know that about Catholic schools specifically. And also one of the schools that the girls' soccer team purposely, what's it called, like laid down their match against the other school that had a trans kid on it was one of the Catholic schools in town. Yeah. I think that's like kind of a cool voluntary way to play this, because it's like, I don't really have a strong position against like trans kids playing sports, but if a lot of people do, I think that's a cool voluntary way to do it, instead of being like, I don't know, doing something like use the state against these people.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it should go through the state.
Right. What do you guys think, you listeners out there, about any of what we've been talking about? Are your kids in public school? Do you have an actual way to defend doing that and try to convince us that it's not child abuse? 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. Call in with whatever's on your mind. 603-283-6160. More coming up.
When commercials come on, don't push the button. Instead, listen. Even if you don't sell things for a living, you're still selling in the various conversations and transactions that make up your busy day. With money and attention so scarce now, effective communication skills have never been more important, especially if you're a job seeker. So take a lesson from Madison Avenue. Often the fewer words, the more effective the message. Like Jiffy Lube, where you never need an appointment, or the Office Max ad that says, you supply the ambition, we supply everything else. How about online ticket broker StubHub.com, the way in when it's sold out, or CyberCupidMatch.com's seductive, go ahead, it's okay to look. How cleverly and succinctly can you distill your message? For more tips, hit survivalspeech.com. I'm Holland Cook.
My name is Jacob Hornberger. I'm president of the Future of Freedom Foundation, which Congressman Ron Paul awarded for having an outstanding freedom website. Write us at fff@fff.org, and we'll send you a free 3-month subscription to our monthly journal of libertarian essays and our booklet, Economic Liberty in the Constitution, which George Mason University economics professor Walter Williams praised in a recent column. That's fff@fff.org.
What if you want to hear the latest episode of Free Talk Live, but all you have is your phone, you forgot to download our archive, and you have no data connection? You can call our Listen line at 641-793-0191. That's a long-distance number, so you may incur charges. If not, listen as long as you want. 641-793-0191. The Free Talk Live Listen line, 641-793-0191.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 2 is next, after the news, here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave with the Week in Review. Donald Trump has conjured up a violent fantasy about one of his most vocal critics being shot. The former US president and White House hopeful said Liz Cheney, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, should be fired upon, describing her as a war hawk. Ms. Cheney is a former United States Congresswoman from Trump's own Republican Party, but she's endorsed the Democratic Party nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris, in next week's election. Benji Hire reports from Washington.
Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face.
These comments are shocking, but no longer come as a surprise. Donald Trump has been called a fascist by his own former chief of staff. He's vowed to send the army after his political opponents, and he's described by Kamala Harris as a petty tyrant who's incited violence and is obsessed with revenge. Liz Cheney has hit back at Trump's remarks too, suggesting, quote, "This is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death." Last night, Trump also suggested without evidence that he's on course for victory in 4 days' time, laying the groundwork to falsely claim fraud again if he loses. And he said vaccine conspiracy theorist Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would take care of health and that billionaire businessman Elon Musk would be an influential figure in a potential second term. Benji Hire, Washington.
US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken has confirmed some 8,000 North Korean troops have been deployed to Russia's Kursk region to take part in the war against Ukraine. Megumi Lim reports from Kyiv.
Ukrainian forces continue to hold several hundred square kilometers of territory in Russia's Kursk region after their surprise incursion in August, but Russian forces have been clawing back some ground. Blinken said Russia has been training North Korean soldiers in artillery, drones, and basic infantry operations, including trench clearing, which suggests they will likely be used for frontline combat. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged Western allies to provide additional support for Ukraine as it braces for another country to enter the war. He said Russian President Vladimir Putin was testing the world's reaction by sending North Korean troops to the Russia-Ukraine border. Megumi Lim in Kyiv.
From Friday, hospitals in Texas are required to ask patients about their citizenship status. Tony Waterman has more.
The mandate doesn't require people to answer the question of whether they're in the U.S. legally, and hospitals are adamant that regardless of the answer, patient care will not change. But critics fear that even the slightest risk of immigration enforcement could scare people away from getting the care that they need. Texas has the highest rate of uninsured residents in the U.S., double the national average, but many of them are citizens. Hospitals will have to start submitting their data in March, and Governor Abbott says he will seek reimbursement from the federal government.
A new poll has revealed a majority of German voters are in favour of early elections. It follows ongoing disagreements within the coalition government led by Chancellor Olaf Scholz. From Berlin, Trent Murray has more.
The new poll by Germany's national broadcaster shows that 85% of voters are now dissatisfied with the government's work. That's an additional 6 percentage points from the last poll 3 weeks ago. Meanwhile, 54% of people support the coalition government calling early elections, the first time the poll has revealed majority support for an early vote. Chancellor Scholz is facing a tough re-election bid, with elections due in roughly October next year. His party remains third in the polls, behind the Conservatives and far-right AfD party. His government, which consists of his own centre-left Social Democrats, Environmental Green Party and pro-business Free Democrats, has been embroiled in several high-profile internal disagreements over both economic and defence policy. Trent Murray, Berlin.
And the Democratic Republic of Congo's foreign minister has accused the Rwandan army and the M23 rebels of violating a ceasefire and seizing a new territory in the east of the country. Therese Kaikwamba Wagner says the latest round of violence will jeopardize a peace initiative that's being mediated by Angola. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. I'm Jagruti Dave.
According to attendees of a karaoke night at Charlie's Bar and Grill, a man 30 seconds into singing Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror better get his act together and get it together fast.
He f***ed up from the get-go, coming in late on that first line, singing totally off-key. He needs to shape up and get his head in the game pronto.
Honestly, he needs to get serious right now or get the f*** off the stage. I mean, what does he think this is? Living on a prayer?
Claiming that this is turning into a train wreck, eyewitnesses say they are embarrassed for the man who has missed several key words despite staring at the prompter the entire time.
You know, he could hit every last note for the remainder of the song, and I still don't know if that would be enough to turn this thing around.
Man in the Mirror is the big leagues, so you better show up with your A-game.
This is the Onion News Network.
You can stick it to the man and big tech. Join our FTL social mastodon at social.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number you can call. Talk about whatever is on your mind, challenge us on our opinions on what we're talking about, or bring up something totally different. It's up to you, because it's Free Talk Live, and not your keys, not your Bitcoin is a lesson that too many people have learned the hard way. It's always best to get your crypto into a wallet that you control, but not all wallets are equal. Many of our hosts have been using Edge for years to manage crypto, and there just aren't many wallets to compare. Featuring a unique login system that makes it easier for you to access your crypto from multiple devices, Edge is designed to be user-friendly. In a space that can be notoriously difficult for non-tech people, Edge is a valuable tool for novices and experts alike. You can learn more at edge.app, that's edge.app, which features a link at the top for those who wish to learn more about crypto and wallets. Thank you to Edge for sponsoring Free Talk Live. And again, to learn more, visit edge.app. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Coach Phil.
And Stu.
And in the last segment, we started talking about parents who infantilize their children for way past the time that they're infants and even into the time that they're adults. That's one thing that has been a absolute no for me while I was dating. I'm married now, but when I was dating, I never ever wanted to be with a guy whose parents were super into his adult life. If he was being making decisions based on what his parents think, that was a no for me.
Well, I mean, you're fed constantly with this propaganda, how everyone's trying to get your kids and you got to keep them safe.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we got to keep the kids safe. I mean, like we talked about earlier, that's all the rhetoric that was, especially it was hit hard in the 2000s by the conservatards who were hitting with everything's for the children. Oh, we got to do this for the children. We got to do that for the children. Oh, if we don't step up, who's going to have a voice for the children?
And nowadays, that is still going on, definitely. And the new way to look at it is that, everybody's out to groom your children, or everybody's out to kidnap your children. And a lot of it, I think a huge thing is true crime online. Like, lots of people love true crime, and I think there are definitely some people that can handle it, as in like watch it and not get like a serious paranoia that like you can't walk outside onto the street and not be kidnapped. But then I think most people, they just get a little crazy and they start to think, like, I was watching true crime for a while, and then I was getting scared in my own house at night, even though I lived in a city. I lived in San Antonio, and I was never scared. And I would do Uber Eats. I would do Uber Eats in the middle of the night and be like delivering and like sketchy apartment complexes, and I was like never scared. And then I started watching true crime, and it was making it to where like I would be terrified in my own house, and I would be like coming home earlier from doing Uber Eats, like, and I just decided like I'm just not going to do this. I'm noticing what's happening. I'm going to stop watching true crime, and I did, and I got like so much better. Like, I also got pepper spray in that time.
Most people are watching the nightly news where they get a good dose of true crime.
That
anyways.
is definitely true. Like, people are getting their dose of that same exact thing from news.
Well, and on top of that, I honestly, if you really look at the actual statistics, things have never been safer or easier. Back in the 70s, they started with the whole, don't talk to strangers. The thing is, like, kids should be talking to strangers, but you can have kids that you have to teach your kids. It's the parents' responsibility to teach the kids some street sense. So what situation warrants to be scared? But like nowadays, just a regular person coming and saying hi to your kid or something, that's a red flag right away. Mm-hmm. No matter who it is. It could be just someone, but if a cop comes and talks to your kids, that's okay.
That's good.
Oh yeah. You got to don't let if anyone tries to talk to you, little Billy, run away. It makes it so these kids grow up, they have anxiety, and get them on drugs. It never ends. It's constant bombarding these kids with, you got to be scared of everything. And then they grow up to be adults who are scared of everything. I mean, I think a lot of this is tied together. I mean, you can debate if you think this is intentional or not, but you have a generation of kids who can't talk to anybody. I mean, there's many factors you can factor in what they're bombarded with. They stare at this idiot screen all day. I mean, we're all guilty of doing it to an extent. I mean, the phones have become such a. If you lose your phone right now, you lose everything, right? You lose your wallet. You lose. You're right. It's pretty much everything's tied into your phone. And
I had my phone stolen from a mall once, and that was back in I was 21 years old, and that was seriously the worst 3 days until I could get a new phone. That was seriously awful. I was crying every day.
Yeah, I mean, how do we get past it where we can be normal functioning humans again?
Now that I've gotten
possible?
paid from Twitter for 3 months, and I'm realizing it's really hard to make a whole lot of money on Twitter, I'm so much better at not being on my phone all day. So I guess I had to find that out, and now I'm the last month I've just been a lot less on my phone.
I had a similar experience where I got really deep into crypto nerding on the internet and just being in Reddit groups and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And at some point I just got overloaded, and I was just kind of put the phone down. I don't use it all that much anymore. I like to listen to podcasts with it and see what time it is.
I use my phone basically all day, but I feel there's a lot worse things you can be using it for than listening to podcasts. That's the number one thing I'm always doing on my phone. But I'm not just scrolling on Twitter or scrolling on. I never go on Instagram really, unless there's some reason something I hear about something somewhere else and I want to go look at it. And it takes me there, but I never end up on my For You page or whatever you call it, scrolling anymore. So, but I think I had to get over those things. I used to be a lot worse about them.
Well, I'm sitting here right now watching a football game, tracking it, so I can't speak it. But it's I'm always tracking sports, or you feel like you're going to miss out if you're not if you don't check your phone every now and then. I think it might be a good idea to put these things down for a day at a time.
Whoa. I actually didn't even bring my phone tonight.
See, I don't
traded
do that.
phones with my wife.
Oh, that's nice. I don't what's the word? Leave my phone when I leave the house. Like, I would feel really freaked out for some reason. Like
Right.
that something bad
It
was
is
going to
kind
happen.
of a weird feeling. Like if my truck breaks down on
Yeah.
my way home, then I'm going to have to flag somebody down and see if they can hotspot me or
Yeah, you have to do
call
old
a tow
school
truck
things.
for me. Or,
and I've never
Yeah.
had to do things like that.
Well,
The whole time I've been driving, phones have existed.
Well, and then I think, oh, what if something happens to my mom and I don't have my phone on me? So I mean, like, there's constant. Yeah, I guess like there's always.
Yep. What did people used to do?
Yeah.
They'd find out 3 days later.
I used a map today at Keene State, though, not while driving. I don't really know how people even had the map out while driving. Like,
Oh, you used a paper map.
no, it was on a sign. It was
Oh,
like,
okay.
you are here, and I had to figure out where to go from there.
Remember
yeah.
MapQuest?
I do too. My dad
Yeah.
used to have us go to MapQuest when we were about to go somewhere and print out the directions for him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I do remember that, and you got the MapQuest, but I couldn't imagine like having that big map, and I love maps, so I've probably looked at my share of maps over the course of my life. But to have a giant map and like, oh, we got to take a left to, and now it's just you put it in your phone and
Especially like while you're driving. Like if it's one thing if the passenger was like looking at the map and telling you where to go, but no, people were doing that themselves while their hands are on the wheels.
Yeah, they were before the internet. They were making these books. They were fairly thick books that would show you all the city streets of one city. And I had to navigate the one for Albuquerque for my uncle. I was helping him do windshield installation, so we were all over the place, and all the navigation was done out of that book. Wow. There was no GPS navigator at that time.
How did people deliver pizza before?
How? I seriously
you'd
really
use
don't
one
know.
of those. You'd use one of those paper map books.
I seriously don't. I can't wrap my mind around that being possible because I did Uber Eats and it's like already hard with the internet to find people's houses sometimes.
Or taxi drivers. Did the passenger have to tell the taxi driver where to go?
It would be like when you route something on your maps and then you look at it for the turn by turn.
Mhm.
It would be basically that. You got to find out which street and then is it left or right, and then track that to the next street, and you just have to figure out the route on your own.
Just like sit there and do it before you take off.
Just pull over in a parking lot, look at the book, find out which roads, and then if it's too much info, you get halfway there and you pull over in another gas station and check the rest of it.
I guess pulling over makes it make a lot more sense because like I'm imagining somebody like, all right, we gotta check the map like on the highway.
Are these the questions are these the reasons why Generation X doesn't like millennials? Because
What was it like? I'm just kidding.
It might be.
Are
part
you
of it.
Gen X?
I identify as Gen X. Yeah.
I think it's I don't know what year it starts, but I think it's supposed to end in 84, and then millennials are supposed to go from 84 to 1996, and I really just hate that. Like, I don't believe I'm a millennial. Not that I really want to be Gen Z. Like, I don't really feel like I'm, oh my god, definitely one or the other, but like I feel less like a millennial than Gen Z, but whatever. I guess I'm a millennial.
Yeah, I picked up on some of the millennial traits, but I'm firmly in the Gen X camp.
I feel like I know tons of people that are like on the cusp, and it's like these things are horrible ways to describe people. But anyways,
boomers are horrible though.
Oh my god,
they are pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing is, like, I do agree that boomers they seem to be the most selfish generation, and
I hear so many stories about that, and it seems to be like widely
100%.
a good generalization. But I do want to say, like, some of my best friends in the whole world, and especially in Keene, are boomers. 2 boomers.
shout out to the boomers.
So like they're not all bad, but I hear all these stories about like boomers who are like telling their kids like, you can only stay with us if you pay $2,000 rent because you got to learn something and stuff like that. And it's like, of course there is such thing as like tough love if your kids are just sucking, but like if your kids are like trying their best, I can't imagine not wanting to help them.
Well, the thing is, I think in the boomer generation, they were able to, I mean, it seems to be an excuse a lot of kids make nowadays where, not kids, I'm doing what I complain about.
I know. I do the same thing.
Young adults. Okay. A lot of young adults have the excuse, well, I can't survive. Everything's so expensive, blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, I think in the boomer generation, it was so much easier. You could work, just like any
McDonald's.
Yeah, you can work any job and you can provide for yourself to an extent.
Yeah, just one adult could provide for a whole household flipping burgers.
Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And like nowadays, I mean, you can have a professional job and have roommates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've lived in San Francisco, New York. You see, houses of people with jobs. You're making good money, yet you're living with roommates as an adult. And I think that's a lot of reasons why, people are waiting to their 30s to have children, 40s even. And I think you're going to see a lot of issues with the future generations with all these, old parents.
Being like born in 1996, like I just said, I can sympathize with both sides. It is so much harder now than it was for the boomers to be a young person and make money. And I also think that lots of people my age and younger are using it as an excuse, like even using it as an excuse to just be bad workers, like tons of different things.
Work your wage. That I hate that. The whole work your wage thing.
There are times that there have been employers that treated me badly enough that I just quit or stopped doing very well. And there's been like egregious times when I was like, I'm not doing that because it's not part of my job. Like if you're getting paid $2.13 an hour and you're really there for the tips and they're trying to make you do a lot of extra stuff, like there's been times where I put my foot down and didn't do that. But there's also just people who are like, I am only doing the bare minimum because, gonna stick it to the man. No, you're not. All you're doing is like degrading your own self-worth and being like a lazy person.
Well, walk into any fast food place other than Chick-fil-A. For some reason, they seem to find employees that work. And In-N-Out Burger. I've always had good experience in it. But walk into any fast food place and try to get them to pay attention that you're even in the door.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've noticed
seriously, and the thing is, I don't need fast food now, but even just in 2020, I noticed it was getting really bad. Like I went to the Dunkin' Donuts near Keene in 2020. I mean, near my house in Keene. It was so honestly scary to think that I was drinking a drink that those people made, because it was like a bunch of 16-year-olds jumping around being silly and like you said, like not even noticing you're in the door. I was like, there's like not an adult in this whole building. It was creepy.
Well, I mean, I also think that just the work ethic just doesn't exist. I mean, especially at lower level jobs, because people think, politicians feed into it. Look at these politicians. Oh, we need a living wage. We need McDonald's workers to make $25 an hour. How am I supposed to feed my family? Just all this stuff. It's just
not every job is meant to feed your family.
No,
for one, I think there should be jobs that pay very little, that people have the freedom to decide, like, hey, I'm just somebody who wants to work part-time, make this much money, and I'll agree to do this, like, low-paying job. And if you don't allow that, then you make problems.
Well, they just keep flipping everything around. Like, corporate jobs incentivize you to be as lazy and useless as possible.
How's that?
Because your boss is useless and lazy, and they're not going to promote you if you're a go-getter, because they're going to make you look bad as the boss. And if you look at any large corporation, Walmart, Home Depot, stuff like that, the guys that get promoted are always the most useless. The do least guy on the floor always gets the promotion.
I could see that, because when I worked at Walmart, there was one thing that I couldn't wrap my mind around: the fact that if you're just like the lowest level person who does nothing but stock shelves, which is what I did when I worked there, I like worked in hardware, would go and grab a box of new stuff and put it up and face the rest of the shelves. And then they were always trying to see who wanted to get a like small promotion, but you got a little bit or more money in your payment, but you got a lot more responsibility. It seemed like a dumb people test. It seemed like everybody that wanted to do that was like dumb and useless. Like, why would you agree?
Yeah, so that's the thing, is the person that goes for that is already their job is to get away with not doing any work while they're on the clock. And that's the game they're playing. And so they look at that and they're like, sure, I can go ahead and shirk all these other duties for a little more pay just as easily.
Well, and then you got, there's been a lot of rhetoric. It seems to be Okay, here we go with tinfoil hat things. But you hear all this communist rhetoric from mainstream politicians that you wouldn't have heard 20 years ago. Like living wage, all these companies are making record profits. Yet all these regulations that these people are begging for lead to where you can't compete.
Absolutely. Even with minimum wage law isn't there to protect low wage workers. It's there to force out anybody who can't keep up to that standard.
Oh, 100%.
It's absolutely to block people out of the workforce.
I mean, if you go around the country right now, what is it? Every town. I mean, even I remember being a kid and going to different towns, seeing different restaurants, different businesses. Now everything is the same. It's all chains.
And after COVID, that got so bad because so many small people had to close their businesses, and I noticed that exact same thing. Is that every city started having like the same chains, and that's it. And it's horrible. Like, especially I went to like 20 different states during 2020, and then like several in 2021, and a lot less in 2022, and then like maybe like 8 states this year. And it's just very, very noticeable. Like, things got a whole lot less diverse as far as what you can eat, where you can shop.
Yep.
In like malls and stuff.
It's all the same. And all these big box like Walmart and Target, I mean, they benefited from 2020 like no other place. In their competition, they don't exist. There is no competition for Walmart and Target at this point. And it's all these regulations that they push, and they feed them into people. They're like, oh, we're trying to help the working person. We're trying to get you a living wage, trying to get it where you can afford No, you're pushing out competition. They're working hand in hand with these mega corporations. It's fascism is what it is, but people don't even know the definition of fascism. They think fascism is mean words, and but it's corporations hand in hand with government. That's fascism. That's the definition. Everyone can. But if you ask these anti-fascist people in whatever, if you ask them a question, what is fascism? They won't be able to give you a proper definition.
They'll say it's like Donald Trump saying mean things, literally.
Or nationalism. Oh,
something about abortion.
Yeah, white supremacy or something like that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just like a theocracy is a religious government. Fascism is a corporate government.
Yep. Well, I mean, the thing is, but if you want to talk about religion, statism is a religion. I'm sure that seems to be a trope among the libertarian crowd. But
That's true.
It is a religion. Statism is the religion. It's the modern religion that the majority of people get behind. Everyone can talk trash about religion all they want, but religion gives people an alternative from the state. I believe that, personally.
I think most religions are just an excuse from people to be handed the answers that they should be looking for, the answers for themselves. And that's exactly what's happening with the state. It's, hey, I don't want to actually have to determine for myself, use my own faculties to decide what I believe is right and to be able to defend that position. No, I just want to be told what's right and what's wrong, be told what to do and get by and eat Cheetos on the couch in the interim.
The thing I don't get about people that subscribe to a religion is, how is it that you're serving two gods? You got two masters. The church will tell you one thing, and then your government's going to tell you something contradictory.
Well, the thing is, there are people who do back their religion or their god over government, and I do know people who are devout in different religions. I'm pretty agnostic myself, but I do know that it seems like the enemy of the government right now is religion. I mean, not religion.
They certainly want to consolidate it all to one world religion. They push the atheism thing very hard.
Oh yeah.
They certainly don't like Christianity.
No.
And I know that Jet is a caller who's Christian, very anarchist, but I feel like most of the American Christians I know, they are far from anarchists. Like, usually they support cops, and they just misled that is like somehow the best way to be a Christian. 603-283-6160. It's free. Talk Live. That's 603-283-6160. Call in with whatever's on your mind. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
Free Talk Live.
I spent 8.5 years of my life in prison, and I blame it squarely on the shoulders of Christianity and the stories that I was told. If my parents, if the people at the Christian school, if the people at church would have just explained morality to me as opposed to explaining heaven and hell as a reason for doing what was right and what was wrong, I think I would have understood. It's relatively easy. If you do the moral thing in life, your life is going to be better. You're going to sleep better at night. You're going to probably be much more prosperous.
Right,
they say crime doesn't pay. They say it for a reason.
Happen right here in this world. We don't have to wait for an afterlife to experience the consequences of our actions, whether good or bad.
If I would have just been given the gift of morality instead of the gift of some silly, crazy story, I would never have gone to prison.
Free Talk Live, 7 nights a week from 7 to 10 Eastern at freetalklive.com.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave with the Week in Review. Donald Trump has conjured up a violent fantasy about one of his most vocal critics being shot. The former US president and White House hopeful said Liz Cheney, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, should be fired upon, describing her as a war hawk. Ms. Cheney is a former United States Congresswoman from Trump's own Republican Party, but she's endorsed the Democratic Party nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris, in next week's election. Benji Hire reports from Washington.
Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. When the guns are trained on her face.
Donald Trump has been called a fascist by his own former chief of staff, and he's described by Kamala Harris as a petty tyrant who's incited violence and is obsessed with revenge. Liz Cheney has hit back at Trump's remarks too, suggesting, quote, "This is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death." Trump also suggested without evidence that he's on course for victory, laying the groundwork to falsely claim fraud again if he loses.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has confirmed some 8,000 North Korean troops have been deployed to Russia's Kursk region to take part in the war against Ukraine. Megumi Lim reports from Kyiv.
Ukrainian forces continue to hold several hundred square kilometers of territory in Russia's Kursk region after their surprise incursion in August, but Russian forces have been clawing back some ground. Blinken said Russia has been training North Korean soldiers in artillery, drones, and basic infantry operations, including trench clearing, which suggests they will likely be used for frontline combat. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged Western allies to provide additional support for Ukraine as it braces for another country to enter the war. He said Russian President Vladimir Putin was testing the world's reaction by sending North Korean troops to the Russia-Ukraine border. Megumi Lim in Kyiv.
From Friday, hospitals in Texas are required to ask patients about their citizenship status. Tony Waterman has more.
The mandate doesn't require people to answer the question of whether they're in the U.S. legally, and hospitals are adamant that regardless of the answer, patient care will not change. But critics fear that even the slightest risk of immigration enforcement could scare people away from getting the care that they need. Texas has the highest rate of uninsured residents in the U.S., double the national average, but many of them are citizens. Hospitals will have to start submitting their data in March, and Governor Abbott says he will seek reimbursement from the federal government.
And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News.
Don't miss a moment of Free Talk Live. Get our archives daily via our podcast at feeds.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number. That's 603-283-6160. 860, and I'd like to thank Chris for being an amplifier with us here at Free Talk Live. That means that Chris went to amps.freetalklive.com and signed up to support the show. AMPS stands for Advertise, Market, Promote, and Support. Thanks to Chris and everyone who supports us. Again, that's amps.freetalklive.com if you'd like to check out the perks and benefits of becoming an amplifier. And thanks so much to everyone who is an amplifier here with us at Free Talk Live. And tonight on the show, you've got me, Bonnie,
Coach Phil,
Stu.
And in the last segment, it's so easy to get into other conversations. And that's basically what the whole show is about, just people expressing their thoughts on national radio and on the internet. And the subject we were about to bring up, this is from the Wall Street Journal. It says, surveillance parents face the ultimate firewall. Freshman year. As kids settle in at college, moms and dads used to monitoring them struggle on the sidelines, and they call it torture. Wow.
Well, they're not kids. You're an adult. If you're in college, you're an adult.
Yep.
And if you're a teenager, you're a young adult. Time to grow up.
Yeah. I have to agree. I find it even cringy when people call like a 13-year-old a kid. It's just like they're just something else. The idea that like a 5-year-old and a 13-year-old are the same, they should be in the same category is crazy.
Well, in the eyes of a lot of these parents, they think
it's mostly the parents.
Oh yeah, it's the parents because they're like, oh, it's just my little Johnny.
And you're a parent, by the way. I just wanted to point that out. So, like, I'm not a parent, but both of you two are parents. So, just wanted to point that out.
In tribal life, like in small tribes, Bushmen or Native Americans, you became a man somewhere between the age of 13 and 15.
That's whole bar mitzvah thing.
Yeah,
And
lots
then-
of cultures had that.
And the quinceanera, where you're supposed to be a woman when you're 15.
Yeah, I think that. Oh, that's 15.
Yeah, 15.
Yep. That's just been like a normal, obvious thing in most human life. Like marriages happened earlier, and people got responsibilities earlier. Even just in my parents' generation, it would be crazy that I didn't get my first job until I was, I think, 18. Like, lots of people would have thought that was crazy because I lived on a military base and I didn't drive until I was like 18. No, I got my driver's license when I was 19. So like I just didn't have the opportunity to drive until I was already 18. Work until I was already 18. And just in my parents' generation, that would have been like, wow, you're like so old for having your first job. And before that, it would have probably been even younger. I'm not like saying, oh, like kids in coal mines were always normal, but it was more like stuff like kids working on the neighbor's farm, stuff like that.
Well, now they'll call the police on you if you have kids working under the age of 16.
Yep.
So,
people will.
Oh yeah, they 100% will.
Like a Chinese restaurant with the kids like bringing out the food and stuff like that has happened.
Oh, I love it. Well, that's
people have
my
gotten in
favorite
trouble
place,
for it.
I want to send a shout out to Chen's in Braintree, Massachusetts. This place is the best. It's run by a family, and they have their kids work the register, do change. These kids are actually working, and I think it's a great lesson for kids to be working. There's nothing. I see nothing wrong.
Yeah,
that's a far better education than you'll ever get in a public school.
Oh, 100%.
The fact that like adults don't know how to give change anymore, so they have to come out in like the change has to come out in a little automatic thing. Not that I don't think that thing is superior, but it's just like the fact that the need for that happened because adults don't know how to count change anymore. I mean that those kids are getting an education.
Well, I've seen
by working.
You give cash at some of these businesses, they'll look at you like, what do I do with this?
Yeah. When I was in high school, my friend's older brother, who was just like 3 years older than me, he said that he paid cash at some gas station and say his change was like 37 cents. And there was no like donation. It's not like she was asking for like, do you want to donate, round up and donate to blah, blah, blah. She just gave him like, no, that was all his change was. So she was like, so do you want your change? Can you imagine that? I would be like, just on principle, I'd be like, yeah, I want all my change right now for that kind of a question. Like, what the heck?
Oh, you're making me do simple math.
That's what it seems like was the problem. Like, if I just ask them if they want their change, maybe some of them won't want it and they won't have to do the math. That's crazy. Just like use a calculator, if anything.
Yeah, that is mind-blowing.
I don't like to have to do that kind of math like on the spot. I usually would use whatever like tool I had anytime I did a job like that. Like, just 1 second, I'm going to use a calculator. Like, honestly, that's fine. But the main problem is people that don't know, like, oh, the nickel is worth 3, right? And stuff like that. There are people out there that don't remember or don't memorize that.
I don't think it's getting any better. I mean, we're talking on the
It's
break
getting worse.
about customer service. You walk into any business. I don't even care if it's, I mean, I was saying fast food, but it's any business. Because, I mean, I remember not that long ago, you walk in a business, hey, how you doing? You know, can I help you?
Mm-hmm.
You don't hear that. I go to Dunkin' Donuts to get a coffee. I did it this morning. I walked in Dunkin' Donuts. I ordered on the app because I think everything's done on apps now. So there's no human interaction. And you say, you walk in, you expect someone to say, can I help you? Because the Dunkin' Donuts I went to, they had the drinks behind the counter where you have to ask for them. Because, I mean, I guess, they probably have a lot of theft with people. But I was sitting there, just the lady like staring at me, drool coming out of her mouth pretty much. And I said, hello? Oh, can I help you?
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm here to pick up my drink.
That's just like Idiocracy.
Oh yeah, and it's Idiocracy.
The movie.
That's a great example. I know it's kind of played out how everyone's like, oh, it's turning into Idiocracy,
But
it
it
actually is.
Yeah, it's a documentary.
And on the movie, you had the people. Okay, here you got people who are smart. They're not having kids, or they're waiting until they're much older to have kids, because you're told from when you're a kid, it's all about, you gotta have a career, you need to make all this money, everything's money, and that's the message you're getting on social media. Everything's about, look at me, you're nothing because look, I have millions of dollars and you have
that is
nothing.
such a big deal, actually. And in fact,
Big
I
time.
think you're really onto something, because sometimes it annoys me when people like to say, like, people like to baselessly claim that nowadays kids are being told not to have kids, and that's just not true. Like, my whole life, I decided I didn't want to have kids when I was a teenager, and I would say that, and adults would tell me, like, well, you're gonna want to have kids, your mind will change, and just tell me that that's like not an option. And like, everybody talked to me like, when you have kids, this, that, and the other. So I don't agree with that, but I think a way bigger, like, maybe more covert reason why people are not wanting to have kids is a lot about the money thing. Like, everybody my age that like when I was in high school, that was like a main topic, like how they were going to, like, when they graduate high school, how they're going to make like a bunch of money. That's always like what everybody on the internet is talking about. Like, they're either inadvertently doing it by like showing you all this expensive stuff they own, or straight up talking about how to make more money.
Okay, I'm going to get back to my tinfoil hat. I honestly think it's deliberate. Everything's to make you feel like you're not worth it. You're not worthy. I mean, look at and then you have other things like, okay, I have this whole theory about dating apps where you got, everyone, I need a guy that has he needs to make at least $300K and be 6 feet tall and all this stuff. They have all these thoughts in their head. And here's the thing, the few guys who fit the description in these dating apps, they don't like, it depends. There are people who are looking for a partner and everything, but then you have these guys who are, they'll go down to people they normally wouldn't associate with because they find women who are easy and who are gonna, then they're looking for a physical thing because they don't have time. They're too focused on their career. So they're just hooking up with random girls who are, I hate to use the number system, but guys who are 10s, they're hooking up with 7s. So these 7s think that they're 10s because these 10 guys but they're not looking for a wife. They're looking for a quick thing. So they're hooking up with these 7s. And then the 7 guys they're not finding the 7 women. So they're going down. So these 5s believe they're 7s. And it creates where people aren't finding proper connections and with people they should be with because they're stuck in these stupid dating apps and instant gratification. I'm going in a tangent in a loop right now, but I hope I'm making sense.
No, I've heard that I don't know if it's a theory. I've heard that explanation before. I really don't know. Like, there could be like, no, Bonnie, there's science backing this up and we've proven that that's the case. I've heard it a lot, and it seems like it's possible. I just don't know. But I mean, like with the dating app specifically, I just don't know. But I do agree with you that I think that this stuff is deliberate, like making people feel bad about themselves. Like I always say on the show, I think one huge thing they want is just to simply make people miserable. And why? Like, there's all kinds of reasons.
Well, I mean, the theory behind it's all to make you feel miserable, like you said. And then when people are miserable, they look for people to save them. And that's where the state steps in. So I believe there is a effort, whether it be, some people would say it's foreign interests that have, they want to tear down the United States. I mean, that would be their theory. Or there's
there's definitely a group of people doing this.
Oh, 100%. But I mean, the debate is who's doing it.
I think it's like a lot of people coming together in a way that most people would poo-poo immediately if I like tried to say it.
Oh, 100%.
Like all over the world.
Yeah. I agree.
And I don't really believe that any political candidate out there is actually out to make things easier, like economically for us, because they want us to have to be basically working every day, doing the most we possibly can every day in order to survive. Because if we're like thriving, then we have time to think outside the box,
Yeah, it gives them less power. I mean, And
we won't be dependent on them if we all have money. I think that's a huge reason they go after certain crypto people, is just because they don't want people to become like wealthy.
Oh, if you're not in the club,
you're not in the club.
Mean, even people who have, don't even talk about crypto. Talk about anyone who has a business, who thrives, and isn't part of the crew. We're not the cool kids, for lack of a better term. They're going to do everything they can to tear down your business and make it.
Oh, so there's like Attila's Gym.
Oh yeah,
Ian Smith in New Jersey. He was trying to continue to run his gym. I guess maybe it's not the same exact thing, but he was just trying to run his gym during COVID, and they closed it down like 7 times, and he like broke in the doors of his own gym multiple times.
Oh yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about them. And I met him at the Libertarian National Convention.
Yeah,
he
at the the Enemies of the State thing.
Oh yeah, that's where we met actually. So yeah, and I have nothing but good things to say about him. And I think what him and his partner did was great, and it gave people hope. And I think that's why they tried to go after him so hard.
Do you know any other examples of people who are just like starting to become successful in like a normal like non-crypto business, and the government goes after them? Because I'm positive it happens.
I've seen stories. I can pull it up. I just need to get it.
You don't have everything off the top of your head.
For sure, yeah.
Well, we always like go off on tangents on the show. Do you have anything you want to say about the last tangents?
I think it's a good point that people are far too focused on the money thing. They've gone ahead. I would say money has universally replaced God on this planet.
That's a really good point.
And that's people use it as even a way of assigning a value to a human.
Oh, 100%. I mean, look at. Nothing. Okay, I think if anything, out of 2020, what happened that year, it just, all of this stuff that we talked about, it was out in the open, and any normie who wasn't involved, like, you got all these conspiracy theorists, that's the term they like to use, but a lot of people got to see government and, how their neighbors are going to react on right in front of their face. And if you can't get people to wake up, quote, after that,
I know.
Is there hope?
That's why that's like one of the huge things that keep me in New Hampshire is like sometimes when I'm starting to feel like, well, I'm just not from here for one thing. So like a lot of times I start to be like one little thing goes bad in my life, I'm like, ugh, it just like, you know, it would make everything better if I moved. Another thing is I'm a military brat, so I've moved like 20 times in my life, and it just seems like the answer sometimes. The thing that keeps me definitely wanting to stay in New Hampshire is the way that people reacted to COVID in every other state, including especially Texas, because that's where I was. And a lot of people like to think that, oh, Texas wasn't that bad for some reason, but it was. I think there's some kind of weird psyop involving Texas where everybody wants you to think that, like, oh, if you want to be free, yeah, the freest people, yeah, cowboys and everything, Texas. I don't really know where that comes from, especially because
I
they're
saw
huge
some
cities.
of what you're talking about there. I drove during the height of the COVID stuff, basically across the country, and a large part of that drive was across the northern part of Texas, and that was some of the weirdest, like most COVID-y scared territory that I went through.
Like in like maybe like Lubbock and Dallas and
No, I avoided mostly the major cities.
Mhm.
We went through like small towns. And
wow, so even in like small towns, because the thing is I wasn't in a lot of small towns in Texas during 2020. I was mostly just in Austin and San Antonio.
I think the where I exited was I can't even remember.
Texarkana.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I saw the craziest stuff. I lived in San Francisco when this went down. So I saw people just snitching on their neighbors and just everything was just total government control over everything. I had to leave. I went to Utah. It was weird. I went to Utah. There was kids playing baseball. Everything felt, normal. And then I went back to California and I was like, wow, this is insane that there's people acting like this. And everyone acted like everyone was a threat. And I was at a grocery store. I was at Safeway and this was in Marin County. So this was north of San Francisco in a really wealthy area, Mill Valley. And this lady was just at the grocery store working and her mask came a little below her nose. And I saw this man attack this lady. How dare you? You're risking my life. And I had to stand up. I said, sir, you're going to die soon. It doesn't matter anyways. You're like 80 years old. Go if you're afraid to go out, go home and go die. I mean, I'm an awful person. I don't know.
No, that sounds like a good thing to do. To stand up for somebody who's being literally bullied.
Oh, I do want to say Chen's, my favorite restaurant for Chinese takeout, is in Weymouth, Massachusetts. I apologize.
Oh, nice. One thing that happened to me during COVID was I was in a Walmart, and a thing I would do a lot of times is I would walk in with the mask on because Walmarts in San Antonio were guarded by cops right outside the front door, and you had to walk through these pointless little labyrinths made of like those things that would
tents of barriers.
Yeah, just like little barriers, but they're made of like ropes, ropes.
they extended retractable
tents.
Tents of barrier.
Those exact things. So, but you'd have to walk through those
like
with
what
a cop.
They make the movie lines out of.
Exactly.
Yep.
With a cop watching you, so that way you could. They saw that you were wearing a mask, and once you did that, then you were in. What I would do as an excuse is just be on the phone the whole time. I would always just call one of my friends and be on the phone, and I would pull my mask down, and for some reason people didn't bother me about it most of the time. And this one time, this man, I walked past him in Walmart, I'm on the phone, walking and shopping and talking at the same time, and I have my mask under my chin, and this man walks past me and calls me the C word, but barely looks me in the eyes and keeps walking. And I was just like, what? I said out loud towards him, what a P word, because it's really you're a grown man and you think I'm endangering you, and it's just no one would ever say that to my face, really. And he hardly said it to my face. He had a mask on. He said it while passing me, and it's you're not gonna do anything, you little B word.
Yeah, people were such babies about the face diapers.
Just
and
babies.
That's exactly what they are. They told you to put this piece of cloth on your face to keep the fluids in.
Yeah.
Which most of us learned out of control.
Well, I mean,
somewhere in our childhood.
And that goes to how everything seems to be divisive. Everything on the social media is cancer. I mean, I fall into it too. I mean, it's owning the other side, whatever argument you're on. And like I said, I fall into it too. Like I start to be like, okay, but you have to understand, are these people real? There are real people who say these things, but you hear the same rhetoric. Where does this rhetoric come from? Part of me thinks it's from this think tank somewhere where they're like, okay, what can we get, like a easy to say slogan that we can get people to
riled
say
up about?
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, just because you hear.
Oh yeah, it's Operation Mockingbird. Have you seen the
100%.
news clips of like thousands of different news commentators saying the exact same line?
Yeah.
Oh, isn't that the Ben Swan video where...
There's a bunch of them because it happens all the time.
The first time I saw one was I lived in Texas, so it had to be before 2013. It's like, it doesn't really matter what the thing is. Say that they were supposed to say, this is the most atrocious thing that's ever happened in American history. But you can find literally like 12 people saying it the same way, same inflections, same exact sentence.
Yeah, it's creepy.
It's weird.
It seems
and by the way, sorry, different news, like somebody might say, oh, well, that's just because a bunch of news people are owned by the same parent company. No, like all across parent companies, etc.
And besides from the news source, you got a lot of this socially engineering agendas come down through the colleges.
Yep.
Well, and have you noticed one thing that it's been more lately where you'll hear a story, it'll come from one perspective, and then you'll hear the same story from another perspective, the exact opposite of what you're seeing and what you're hearing, exact opposite, and it feels like a demoralization campaign where you don't know what to believe, you don't know what's real. And
almost any time you end up with that kind of a situation where you've got an obvious dichotomy and they're just trying to get you to ask the wrong question. They don't and they don't care which outcome you come to, because as long as you're thinking about that thing, you're not thinking about anything important.
So it's like if there's like this argument where one side is saying like, we oppose trans kids in soccer, and the other side is saying we love trans kids in soccer, and they're not bringing up the main idea like we were talking about in the beginning of the show about like public schools.
Yeah, the question I would be asking there is what kids are trans, at what age, and why?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it seems like, oh, yeah, our family, we have 3 trans kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard about these things, and that is not natural.
So
that did
many
not
things
happen on a natural occurrence.
So many things, even not just trans stuff, like trans ideology. So many things are obviously social contagions. Mm-hmm. And one thing that was always obvious to me, because this was kind of the thing when I was in high school, like being trans was not the thing. There was one kid I knew who was like secretly cross-dressing, didn't call himself trans, called himself a cross-dresser, and that was like I graduated 2015, so that was not that long ago. But anyways, when I was in high school, a huge social contagion was all different kinds of mental illnesses. Like everybody was on the internet in some forum believing that they had a mental illness and getting told by these anonymous internet people like, you are part of a community with us, we all have depression, or we all have BPD, and like now you can get attention for this thing, and you should go to the doctor, and the doctor will tell you that you have it. And that was a huge thing when I was in high school. It was like all over Tumblr. Tumblr basically was just that. Eating disorders, stuff like that. That's so obviously a social contagion, because then like those people grow out of it.
And now you're getting reinforcement from these politicians who are telling you this is normal. This is how it is.
And doctors giving people irreversible experimental trans surgeries. Like, that's so unimaginable and medieval. 603-283-6160. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up. You can call 603-283-6160. What's your opinion on all this? It's Free Talk Live.
Hi, I'm Derek J. To me, an activist's calling is to actively work to advance a cause. The cause for which I work is personal freedom. I believe my life is best when I engage in voluntary interactions and self-government. I reject the idea that anyone else has a higher claim to my life or my body than I do. I see people who call themselves the government as a threat to my personal freedom. I realize you may feel differently, but my relationship with the people who call themselves the government is completely involuntary. If Starbucks used some of its money to drop bombs, I wouldn't shop there. So why would I support the American empire? The empire does not require my consent.
Derek J's Victimless Crime Spree. Watch it for free and order the Director's Cut DVD at victimlesscrimespree.com. That's victimlesscrimespree.com.
There are basically two types of advertising, direct response and branding. Radio's great for direct response with its low cost to listener ratio, but audio can't be beat for branding, which is a longer term endeavor. You want to be the first thing that someone thinks of when they think about your product or service. If you have a local business that you want kept top of mind in your community, call the station. If you need national reach, Free Talk Live's got around 200 radio stations, millions of monthly listening sessions, can suit all budgets, and if we don't think we're right for you, we'll tell you. Email me, mark@freetalklive.com.
Tired of cancel culture? Sick of mega tech corporations holding an axe over your head? Join the LRN.FM Matrix chat server. It's self-hosted, so no one else can tell us what to do or say. Don't like the existing channels? You can make your own. You can even connect into some of our channels from other Matrix servers. It's federated. For the full LRN.FM Matrix experience, though, you should join our server via the step-by-step instructions at chat.lrn.fm. Chat.lrn.fm.
You're listening to the live edition of Free Talk Live. Hour number 3 is next after the news here on the Liberty Radio Network at LRN.FM.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave with the Week in Review. Donald Trump has conjured up a violent fantasy about one of his most vocal critics being shot. The former US president and White House hopeful said Liz Cheney, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, should be fired upon, describing her as a war hawk. Ms. Cheney is a former United States Congresswoman from Trump's own Republican Party, but she's endorsed the Democratic Party nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris, in next week's election. Benji Hire reports from Washington.
Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face.
These comments are shocking, but no longer come as a surprise. Donald Trump has been called a fascist by his own former chief of staff. He's vowed to send the army after his political opponents, and he's described by Kamala Harris as a petty tyrant who's incited violence and is obsessed with revenge. Liz Cheney has hit back at Trump's remarks too, suggesting, quote, "This is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death." Last night, Trump also suggested without evidence that he's on course for victory in 4 days' time, laying the groundwork to falsely claim fraud again if he loses. And he said vaccine conspiracy theorist Robert F. Kennedy Jr. would take care of health and that billionaire businessman Elon Musk would be an influential figure in a potential second term. Benji Hire, Washington.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has confirmed some 8,000 North Korean troops have been deployed to Russia's Kursk region to take part in the war against Ukraine. Megumi Lim reports from Kyiv.
Ukrainian forces continue to hold several hundred square kilometers of territory in Russia's Kursk region after their surprise incursion in August, but Russian forces have been clawing back some ground. Blinken said Russia has been training North Korean soldiers in artillery, drones, and basic infantry operations, including trench clearing, which suggests they will likely be used for frontline combat. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged Western allies to provide additional support for Ukraine as it braces for another country to enter the war. He said Russian President Vladimir Putin was testing the world's reaction by sending North Korean troops to the Russia-Ukraine border. Megumi Lim in Kyiv.
From Friday, hospitals in Texas are required to ask patients about their citizenship status. Tony Waterman has more.
The mandate doesn't require people to answer the question of whether they're in the U.S. legally, and hospitals are adamant that regardless of the answer, patient care will not change. But critics fear that even the slightest risk of immigration enforcement could scare people away from getting the care that they need. Texas has the highest rate of uninsured residents in the U.S., double the national average, but many of them are citizens. Hospitals will have to start submitting their data in March, and Governor Abbott says he will seek reimbursement from the federal government.
A new poll has revealed a majority of German voters are in favour of early elections. It follows ongoing disagreements within the coalition government led by Chancellor Olaf Scholz. From Berlin, Trent Murray has more.
The new poll by Germany's national broadcaster shows that 85% of voters are now dissatisfied with the government's work. That's an additional 6 percentage points from the last poll 3 weeks ago. Meanwhile, 54% of people support the coalition government calling early elections, the first time the poll has revealed majority support for an early vote. Chancellor Scholz is facing a tough re-election bid, with elections due in roughly October next year. His party remains third in the polls, behind the Conservatives and far-right AfD party. His government, which consists of his own centre-left Social Democrats, Environmental Green Party and pro-business Free Democrats, has been embroiled in several high-profile internal disagreements over both economic and defence policy. Trent Murray, Berlin.
And the Democratic Republic of Congo's foreign minister has accused the Rwandan army and the M23 rebels of violating a ceasefire and seizing a new territory in the east of the country. Therese Kaikwamba Wagner says the latest round of violence will jeopardize a peace initiative that's being mediated by Angola. And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News. I'm Jagruti Dave.
A new teen trend of walking wet and nude couldn't have caught on at a worse time, and a taxpayer is outraged. And lo, the Lord said unto the Israelites, Look unto the heavens, and you shall see a news review program to rival the greatest wonders of the earth. This is the Onion Week in Review. As a front of dense frigid air and snow showers brought sub-zero temperatures to much of the country this week, Canton, Ohio residents noted that the blanketing of snow they had received created the illusion that their town was not a total shithole. Residents added that unlike its typical depressing reality, the snow-cloaked town actually looked halfway livable.
Canton is usually a miserable little dump, but you know when that first snow fell and covered everything in a layer of white powder? For about 5 minutes it was like not everything I saw depressed the living out of me.
Reports from locals also confirmed that for a brief period, the streets, parks, and buildings around them gave the surprising impression of not being a run-down, heartbreaking excuse for a hometown.
This is the Onion News Network.
We're still not sure why you'd want to watch, but our video feed is streaming nightly for free at cam.freetalklive.com. Free Talk Live.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number here. That's 603-283-6160. And Free Talk Live is brought to you by LibertyMinded.com. Official Free Talk Live gear like t-shirts and hoodies are available at LibertyMinded.com. Plus, you'll find a unique collection of cool and funny liberty-oriented clothing at LibertyMinded.com. That's LibertyMinded.com. And Free Talk Live is on. Your host tonight is Bonnie, and you've also got
Coach Phil
and Stu.
And we're just going to go straight to the phones. We have David from New Mexico on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind, David?
Anybody seen my squirrel?
Oh my God.
Missing.
I'm also missing a peanut.
A what? A peanut?
A peanut.
Well, Fina's right. What? I'm sorry, say it again.
Peanut.
That was the squirrel's name, David.
A peanut? I got a whole bag right here if you want some. Should I jam them in the phone?
Yes, please.
Okay, here comes. Watch out.
It just flew out the microphone.
That was good radio. What's up, David?
All right. So yeah, I'm looking for my squirrel. He was here earlier. The little SOB. He was into my food supply. He was stealing from me again.
I believe it too because David has a collection of wild animals that come to his house.
Well, these ones are really wild because they're Mexicans.
What?
They're Mexican squirrels. Look it up. I'm not even lying.
Oh, I see. I didn't know there's such thing as Mexican squirrel versus like what's the other one? Like American squirrel? What do they call like the regular squirrel?
The Mexican ground squirrel, and how you can tell they're Mexican is they're brown.
They're all brown.
No, Mexicans, yeah, I know, but this squirrel, the squirrels are not all brown. You just had a black one earlier, and these ones are brown, and the other ones, their cousins that are not Mexicans or illegal, are not brown.
This says the appearance of a Mexican ground squirrel. The Mexican ground squirrel has brown fur with 9 rows of white spots on its back, a white belly, and a bushy tail. So that's how you can tell if it's a Mexican ground squirrel.
Right, and plus they'll be carrying all of your stuff. They'll have been to your place and stolen all your stuff, and they're running off with it.
Oh my god!
Well, how would they get into your house?
Well, if you leave the door cracked, they'll come right in, and literally, I'm not even lying. Again, they'll come. I had to chase them out of my house one time because they were coming in and helping themselves.
That reminds me of like The Borrowers, that movie where there was little people living in the walls. You remember that one?
Yeah, I remember that one.
And anytime your stuff went missing, it was one of the borrowers.
The Mexican ground squirrels, they're not only borrowers, they're barrio.
So stupid.
They can fit into a space as small as 3/4 of an inch. They can find their way in if they want in. Yeah.
I had a rat in my wall in San Francisco.
David
has
pet rats.
Right here. Sometimes he's in the wall. Other times he's here getting a drink of water where I put his dish.
Yeah, he has a pet like squirrel that just comes around. Not like a pet squirrel from rat? Not a squirrel. Rat that comes around. And I don't mean like from the store. I mean like that just started to like David because he sits outside in the desert. Yeah.
Rats make good pets. Just don't let your local bureaucracy know about it.
Yeah, true. Don't make an Instagram.
No, I don't want them to come and cut its head off to see if it's got rabies.
That's right.
Exactly.
Well, don't have a cute kitty either, because kitties will eat him too.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. My friend's supply went down when I took pity on some stray cats a year or two ago. All my friends' supply went down. Put it that way. They started killing all my friends.
Yeah, cats are cold-blooded.
What about your Roadrunner? Does he eat rats?
He was here just it was yesterday morning. Oh, rats? No, that's too big.
Yeah,
he would if he was bigger. If he instead of being like 14 inches tall, if the Roadrunner was about 2'11", he would eat rats.
You have to watch out for anvils, though.
What are they? Oh, yeah. I was thinking an animal.
That's only if you're coyote. The Roadrunners are usually the ones shoving the anvil off the mesa.
That's funny.
Well, you can always paint a tunnel in a rock.
There's been times I'm driving towards something and I think to myself, like a tunnel, and I think to myself, imagine if that was just a painting on a rock in front of me, and it like literally like released cortisol in my brain because it looks kind of like it if you start to think that.
Yeah, imagine a tunnel going through your mind, which is what would happen if you went into it at highway speed.
Correct.
Anything else on your mind, David? I don't even know what that meant.
Yeah, lots. I'm just giving you a chance. So, speaking of the squirrel, that's a good segue. So, and actually, somebody on your chat, I think is it Chris? Not on that chat, on the one you don't read, the YouTube one.
Oh.
He said one thing that I've been saying for years, and that's and nobody will do it because they're not angry enough yet, I guess, is shun government workers.
Oh, we do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, other than you three, everybody else needs to shun government workers, because if people no longer take government jobs, the government can't keep you as pets anymore.
I think I've done some of like my favorite work in that regard, just with what's it called, the meter maids. Like I've followed the meter maids around with Joa of Breaking the Flaw, and just told them how bad of a job they're doing, like what a bad job they're doing, not that they're doing bad at being meter maids, but stuff like that. And I also took a parking ticket to court and got to let her have it in court. And I just think it's a really good thing to embarrass these people about what they're doing, even if that exact person doesn't get it. Like, most of the time they really seem like you're just talking to a brick wall. Well, you're disincentivizing people to want to take that job in the future. So,
well, usually people who work jobs like that have no employable skills whatsoever, especially if they're working in these offices. Like, let's say marriage license people, those are the worst. If people work in any kind of government job like that where they're just stamping papers and getting paid way more than they should for whatever job. DMV is another one. Yeah, just all these people. I mean, TSA, look at these people. Could you see them having any other job where they can make a living like they do at work?
Oh, they're all retards.
Oh,
yeah, I like to refer to these people as intraspecies kleptoparasites.
They are parasites.
And so here's another. Let's segue into this. So Ian likes to cite the Gulag Archipelago, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and one of the things that Solzhenitsyn said is why didn't we win crews of whatever, of 2, 4, 6 communist guard, whatever their proper title was for the Soviets, came at 2, 3 in the morning to abduct some people, family, husband, whatever, from their apartment, never to be seen again. Why didn't we just hide in the stairwell and basically make it so that they didn't come home that night?
Yeah.
And then so that was a piece of real history. So when I lived in Switzerland, I'd had that girlfriend from over there. She was over here in the States for years, and then we went to Switzerland, where she's from. And at some point, we had this conversation about American cops and things that had gone down. And so I asked her, so, do you have the same problems in Switzerland? And she said, oh, no. If the cops did anything like that, if any single cop or a couple cops or whatever did anything like that, what would happen is some dark night when the cop was out about alone, whether on duty or off, 6 or 8 guys would show up and beat the ever living what out of this cop, and that cop would never do it again. And then I asked the next logical question: well, would those guys get hunted down? And she's like, no. If the people did that to a cop, everybody knew the cop did it, or the cop deserved it. And nobody was going to go hunting for anybody to find out what happened to that cop.
That's a huge problem in American culture, and I don't know how to change it. Like, my friend was one time saying, like, why are there so many, like,
in the country?
Why are there so many women that get abused by cops and, like, no men in their family or lives goes and kills the cop? Like, why? That's, like, there's obviously, like, a problem in the culture right now, and I really believe that, because it just doesn't make any sense. Like, that's how things have been for like hundreds of years, that if you steal from someone, kidnap someone, kill their pet for no reason, you would face actual consequences. And the only time that's like stopped happening is in recent American history. It still happens in Mexico.
Well, the big thing is it's because modern life is way too easy.
Yeah.
And people, they don't want to give up their convenient life. Like,
yeah,
everything.
They've outsourced their responsibilities.
Yeah.
100%. So they expect if something bad happens, someone else will handle it.
Yeah.
And no one does. I mean,
it's never on me to do the thing.
Oh, 100%.
When really it's always all on all of us all the time to do the thing that's right.
And another, like, I mean, I remember once I was at Safeway in San Francisco. This guy stole a bunch of stuff. He had a backpack full of stuff, which normally I just like, whatever, I don't care, like everyone else. But this security guard, this lady, she tried to stand in front of him. He threw her to the ground.
Wow.
Thud. So I'm like, do you want me to go get him? So I ran after him. I caught him, this wiry crackhead dude, and I grabbed him. I grabbed the backpack, and he wormed his way out. He took off his shirt, and somehow he got out. So that shows that I need to work on my grappling skills. But he did get away. But I got his backpack, and
nice.
No one does anything. Like just everyone's a spectator. Oh, someone else will handle it. That's why San Francisco's become such a dystopian hellhole, is because they got all these thieves. No one does anything. People just watch. Oh, and then you got defenders. You got people defending these people going into these businesses, stealing things. Oh, insurance will pay for it. They're just, insurance will cover it.
I got slightly pulled into some of those arguments before. Like, what am I trying to say? I got convinced by people on the internet. I was like starting to think, yeah, like inflation is so bad and corporations are so bad, which I still believe those things, that I started believing like if somebody's just stealing like something they need and just like getting away with that, I don't really feel bad for the corporation. Well, they have insurance, but Ian like made the best case to me when I was saying that once, that, well, you're stealing from your neighbors when you steal from even a corporation, because the corporation doesn't just take the hit. They raise prices with all of the, like, a whole bunch of loss every year. They'll raise prices, and you're basically stealing from your neighbors by, like, causing prices to be raised, and I think that's a really good point.
And on top of that, I'm not going to be sitting around waiting for an employee to open up a case so I can get an ice cream.
I hate that. Yeah, I had to have
100%.
that the other day with and by the way, I wasn't saying that I stole and justified it that way. It was just that I was like being convinced, like, is it really that bad, Ian? Because there's this going on, blah blah blah. Well, yeah, I do think it's that bad. You're basically causing prices to go up. Not that you can really do that any faster than inflation, but. And the other thing is, yeah, like, it's annoying. I had to stand there and wait for nails the other day. Oh, I forgot I bought those. But
You stop someone from stealing?
No.
They'll throw the book at you. Especially in a place like San Francisco, if you stop, look at what happened to the guy at the where was that, the bodega in New York City. He was defending himself over a guy jumping over the counter, so he stabbed him. I don't know if you remember that happened. You remember that happened a few years ago?
I think I may have heard that one.
Yeah, he stabbed him, so he protected himself. I mean, it's not only just being
the government got mad at him.
He was getting they were trying to prosecute him for murder.
Wow.
And he was defending himself. It was clear self-defense, but, God forbid you try to defend yourself in any of these places, like New York City, San Francisco.
South Africa. You have to study the events of South Africa, because the exact same thing, the exact same model was and still is being used in South Africa, only they started there 20, 30 years before they started here. And they do that exact same thing. It's part of the plan.
Doing what?
Is well, there's many points to it, but one is what you were just talking about, where the underdog, the minority, the oppressed person who's being used as a useful idiot, as a tool, goes in and steals something, and they're emboldened to steal it because the government is now not doing anything to them. But what the government does is then when somebody tries to stop them, the property owner or somebody trying to help the property owner tries to stop them from any crime, could be up to and including murder.
Yep.
If like one example, I just heard this example from somebody I know on the radio today who grew up in South Africa and now lives here and has a radio program like you guys do. And she was telling about home invasions, for instance. A person will break into your home and be violent, including not only stealing but raping and killing and beating and all that stuff. And if you defend yourself and end up hurting the home invader in the process, the cops will come and haul you away for hurting the poor person who was breaking in just looking for food and stuff because they don't have any.
Wow.
There's been I feel like that's happened here in the United States. Where,
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I mixed something up a bit.
It's part of the plan. The point is you've got to understand it's part of the plan. These are communists. These are the same people that did the same thing in Russia, 100 years ago, 110 years ago, whatever it is. 1917, is that the year? 100 and,
yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah, okay. And it's the same people.
And
Same people.
It is the exact same people. It's the exact same people that went ahead and gave Trotsky a big bank account full of money and dropped him off in Russia. It's the same. It's the same people.
And Lily Tang Williams says all the time that she saw all this happen. All that's happening in America now is stuff she saw happening during the Cultural Revolution under Mao.
Well, do you?
Yeah, it's the same people, the same tactics, the same thing. And South Africa is just one of the most current, the least old, because people have small minds. Oh, that was 107 years ago over in Russia. Well, how can that apply to here? So South Africa is, white people who are Europeans because they were from Europe, and it was from 30, 40 years ago to 20 years ago to 10 years ago to this very day. So it's a little bit easier to digest. And the reason you don't hear anything about it is because they that control the media don't want you to hear about it, because you might get worried about what they're doing to you right now, southern border.
Well, David, what you're talking about, the communist directives here. There was an interview with the KGB defector. You remember Yuri Bezmenov, and sometime like 30 years ago, he basically gave a blueprint of how they were going to take down the United States, and everything that he talked about, you can see it now, and it's crazy.
And all of those same points were actually read into your congressional record in what year was it when they read somebody read the what's it called again, the 45 points of the communist plan for the takeover of America.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Was that where it started with create a central bank?
Yeah, all of that. Take over the schools, take over this, take over that, infiltrate this. And the same thing with Mao. It's the same thing, the long march through the institutions. It's the same plan over and over and over again. And they're doing it to you right now, and they have been for decades.
And some of it is cultural and social contagion and stuff like that. I used to really not believe that kind of stuff, but one person that did change my mind is Lily Tang Williams, like talking about living through this kind of stuff.
Yeah, you're spot on. They have a very specific plan, and it seems to work pretty well.
Yep.
And it's the same thing over and over, and people keep falling for the same tricks.
Well, that's why the people that made this country made sure to write it in your very founding documents that you, the people, have the authority to stop them. It's just that you don't seem to believe it.
I believe it.
It really sucks because
remember, wait a minute, Stu. Wait a minute. I said you, the people, and Stu is not you, the people. You're a member of. So I'm not just talking to you three. I'm talking to the entirety of the population.
Well, that goes back.
I believe people could stop it anytime they want to. I think they still have all the power they need to do it. They just
I agree.
They're just scared.
Yeah, people are scared, and a huge thing is exactly what you said earlier, that they're comfortable. And the other thing that really is a problem is that if one person stands up first, well, that person will get put down and used as an example, because not enough people are brave enough to all do it together. And we're in such a extremely watchdog state, whatever I'm trying to say. Like, we don't have a lot of privacy, and that is a huge reason they want to cut down more and more and more and more on our privacy, because if they can just put snuff out a flame of somebody who wants to make any kind of a difference by just finding out the exact person who did the first thing, then they'll do that and make an example of you.
Well,
I'm not trying to make excuses.
They'll get the lemmings to attack you.
And all of that is why I really think that the answer is not violence, because I think they have made it to where they kind of want people to be violent as like an excuse to be violent too. Like they've kind of, I think that they have a lot of the power right now as far as violence, and that the answer is non-compliance.
Well, and even if there's not violence, they'll just say you were violent. Look at what is
true.
that? The whole, they took over the storming the Capitol. They tried to overthrow
January
the government.
6th.
It's fake.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't try to overthrow the government. There were government agents. There was an unauthorized tour of the
Capitol. 603-283-6160. Thank you for the call, David. The show is so much more fun when people call in. 603-283-6160. We have some other people on hold, and we'll get to them next. It's Free Talk Live. More coming up.
This hour of Free Talk Live is brought to you by Dash Digital Cash. Dash is the cryptocurrency designed to be used for spending. In addition to being one of the world's first cryptocurrencies, Dash was the first crypto project to have a decentralized autonomous organization that to this day continues to improve and promote Dash. Every month, 10% of the mining rewards go into a treasury. Anyone with one Dash to spend can put forward a proposal to the Dash masternodes. The masternodes vet the proposals and decide which ones move forward and are funded by that treasury. Nowadays, DAOs are plentiful, but Dash paved the way by doing it first, nearly a decade ago. Dash is one of the oldest cryptocurrencies and is widely available on exchanges, including the decentralized Maya protocol, and in multi-crypto wallets. It's easy to get and use Dash. Start by learning more at dash.org. Thanks to the Dash DAO for sending us 32 Dash per month to promote Dash on the air. Visit dash.org to learn about Dash. Dash.org.
From Feature Story News in Washington, I'm Jagruti Dave with the Week in Review. Donald Trump has conjured up a violent fantasy about one of his most vocal critics being shot. The former US president and White House hopeful said Liz Cheney, the daughter of former Vice President Dick Cheney, should be fired upon, describing her as a war hawk. Ms. Cheney is a former United States Congresswoman from Trump's own Republican Party, but she's endorsed the Democratic Party nominee, Vice President Kamala Harris, in next week's election. Benji Hire reports from Washington.
Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. You know, when the guns are trained on her face.
Donald Trump has been called a fascist by his own former chief of staff, and he's described by Kamala Harris as a petty tyrant who's incited violence and is obsessed with revenge. Liz Cheney has hit back at Trump's remarks too, suggesting, quote, "This is how dictators destroy free nations. They threaten those who speak against them with death." Trump also suggested without evidence that he's on course for victory, laying the groundwork to falsely claim fraud again if he loses.
US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has confirmed some 8,000 North Korean troops have been deployed to Russia's Kursk region to take part in the war against Ukraine. Megumi Lim reports from Kyiv.
Ukrainian forces continue to hold several hundred square kilometers of territory in Russia's Kursk region after their surprise incursion in August, but Russian forces have been clawing back some ground. Blinken said Russia has been training North Korean soldiers in artillery, drones, and basic infantry operations, including trench clearing, which suggests they will likely be used for frontline combat. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has urged Western allies to provide additional support for Ukraine as it braces for another country to enter the war. He said Russian President Vladimir Putin was testing the world's reaction by sending North Korean troops to the Russia-Ukraine border. Megumi Lim in Kyiv.
From Friday, hospitals in Texas are required to ask patients about their citizenship status. Tony Waterman has more.
The mandate doesn't require people to answer the question of whether they're in the U.S. legally, and hospitals are adamant that regardless of the answer, patient care will not change. But critics fear that even the slightest risk of immigration enforcement could scare people away from getting the care that they need. Texas has the highest rate of uninsured residents in the U.S., double the national average, but many of them are citizens. Hospitals will have to start submitting their data in March, and Governor Abbott says he will seek reimbursement from the federal government.
And that is the Week in Review from Feature Story News.
You can help spread the ideas of liberty with our Patreon for just $5 per month at amps.freetalklive.com.
It's Free Talk Live, talk radio that you control, and 603-283-6160 is the phone number here. That's 603-283-6160. Call in with whatever is on your mind. And we've been podcasting since podcasts began, but we're launching a new podcast anyway. Our new podcast is a 30 to 45 minute show releasing once a week, and you can find it at freetalkcast.com. It's brought to you by the same people who bring you Free Talk Live, and we'd love for you to check it out. That's, again, freetalkcast.com. And with you on Free Talk Live tonight, you've got me, Bonnie.
Coach Phil.
And Stu.
And we already have callers on the line. I'm going to go straight to the phones. Creighton in Kentucky, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Hi, I wanted to share something I learned when I went to early voting in Kentucky just the other day. And Kentucky's had the Libertarian Party has had ballot access to Kentucky for a couple decades. So I'm used to seeing Libertarians as choice. But this year I went up there and I'm looking at my ballot, and of course there's the presidential ballot, and there's Harris and Trump on the presidential ballot. Going all the way down the ballot, and I'm in the district for Thomas Massie as congressman. And all the way down the ballot, after Harris, not a single race was opposed. Every single race that I could vote on was a Republican running unopposed. And I'm used to the idea that the Libertarians in Kentucky do not oppose Thomas Massie. He's very popular, even among the Libertarians here. But farther down the ballot, I mean, all the way to representatives in the legislature were unopposed, and the Libertarian Party didn't even put up anybody there either. And I was kind of flabbergasted because of these parties that were available.
That's really interesting. Did you look out into, did you go to the Libertarian Party of Kentucky's website and see if they had an explanation or anything?
No. And I wouldn't expect them to put that kind of high-level baseball, inside baseball kind of politicking on their website anyway. But I am honestly surprised that they didn't have anybody run against even the low level.
Well, I have seen there have been some states that the Libertarian Party refused to actually say that Chase Oliver is their candidate type of thing. So maybe the Libertarian Party in Kentucky did that. Maybe.
No, Chase Oliver was on the ballot as presidential race. Just nothing down ballot.
Maybe no one wanted to run. I mean, that'd be, as you're saying it, that's unusual. You don't think that's
but I have
possible?
To be honest, I don't know what's possible. I just found it was incredibly interesting. But the thing about Chase Oliver is I looked into him pretty deep, and I just couldn't vote for him.
Yeah.
So, which kind of puts me in a pickle. I either choose not to vote at all in the presidential race, or I vote based on entirely the issue that Donald Trump promised to pardon
Ross Ulbricht.
Ross Ulbricht. And that's actually a promise that he can keep as president. It's entirely within his power to do so. So I did actually vote for Donald Trump, which is kind of a first for me to vote for a major party candidate for president.
What was
I
it?
may have done it one other time.
What was it about Chase Oliver that you found made it to where you couldn't vote for him, the Libertarian candidate for president?
That he doesn't seem libertarian to me.
Yeah.
And in the sense that he advocated for many of these health social programs. Like, I'm not opposed to the idea that some children could actually be transgender, but the idea that the number that we see today in our modern world, it's mathematically impossible.
Well,
for
I agree
that
with
number
that,
to be true.
but that's actually not Chase's position. Chase's position is to leave it to the parents. So, I mean, I don't know why this is going around in libertarian circles. I have absolutely no issue with Chase. I don't vote because voting's lame, and I really couldn't care less. But Chase Oliver's getting all this hate.
I hate when
for
people say
absolutely
could care
no
less.
reason.
I hate him. I'm just kidding. I don't hate him.
I think he's a pretty based libertarian.
I don't hate
regardless
him
of what people are saying.
Only because I don't hate anyone, but I don't like him and would never vote for him. Simply, one issue. I don't even care to look into him anymore because of the way he acted in 2020. I don't trust, nor do I like anyone who was saying things on the internet like, don't go to gatherings for Thanksgiving. You can mask up or you can stay at home for this one day. You'll be fine. No, I don't trust somebody with power if they were like that then. Even if they later were like, you know what? I changed my mind. I could never vote for somebody. And I'm not even saying that he said something about a policy that way.
Yeah.
Just the fact that that's how he was.
No, I understand.
Yeah, if your instinct is to force your opinion on others, then you're the wrong person for the position.
Just that anybody who's wrong on that is clearly has multiple different problems, and I can't imagine that they're not a statist in some way. And the other thing is he won't disclose a lot of his opinions on a lot of things, and he didn't go and really run very much. It seems almost like he didn't want to get into stuff. See what I'm saying? He goes to pride parades with little kids and stuff, and yet that's supposedly not his position. Then what are you doing? What's your position? Oh, you don't want to go on any of the people who are inviting you to come on and talk. Kind of weird.
Well, I think one of the things that, I honestly think that he is pretty based with what he says and what I've heard him say. I've seen him in person. I've talked to him personally, but I do get where you're coming from, the whole 2020 thing. I completely understand that. But the thing is, I think a lot of the libertarians are kind of off on where they attack Chase. Because they're all like, oh, he wants kids to get transitioning and all this stuff. I've never heard him say that ever. It's just like the whole, I don't like it when people don't give their arguments from a factual place.
Here's the thing. I can admit that I don't remember where I saw that, but I did see him interviewed. And although he doesn't favor government control of the decision, you're right about that. He wants to leave that to the parents. He does favor public support of the cost of the operation.
Operations on children?
Yeah,
that's whack, man.
I haven't heard that, so I can't speak on that. If that's true, then I completely change what I say. But I've never heard that, so I can't.
Yeah, it's hard to have everything you're saying when you're just on the spot on the radio. A lot of people think it's, oh, if I was talking right now, I would know exactly where I heard everything from. No, it's kind of hard. Sometimes on the breaks, we'll look something up and find what we were talking about, or find out we were wrong in what we were saying and admit it, etc., etc. And we don't have producers with in our ear with earpiece or something like that.
Well, I do know the Libertarian Party has got some serious problems because there are a lot of people that they could run that would be fantastic candidates. I think I heard Dave Smith was willing to run as president, but that would be a good candidate. He's funny, he's likable, and
he's really good.
And he's got he's got the ideas set down straight. So, Jacob Hornberger would have been a good choice.
Well, he's pretty base, but I think he's kind of a boring candidate. He doesn't have the personality. And
that's half of the excuse they use for putting
Chase
up these milquetoast weird guys. Like, I've never heard of this guy Chase until I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. It was the first time I ever heard his name.
Oh yeah, I'm not a fan of Gary Johnson at all.
He was like
that was a
the
total
epitome
joke.
of milquetoast. And the thing was, they had McAfee that year. That would have been the best decision ever. Like, run crazy against crazy with Trump. That would have been amazing. And I don't mean he's just crazy. He was,
I thought Joe Jorgensen.
That would have been great entertainment.
Yeah.
Joe Jorgensen, I think, was probably the best candidate they've had in a while.
It's just that I think she purposely went and toned things down and became milquetoast just for running.
Oh, okay.
And another thing was that like it was 2020. Dave Smith actually pointed this out. Dave Smith and Tom Woods pointed this out in their recent interview they did together on the Tom Woods show. That she would like purposely avoid anything about what was going on in 2020 while running for president. And it was like, you can go around and say really libertarian things in speeches that would normally be like super cool that she's saying that, but when you're doing that while avoiding the topic of 2020 medical tyranny, it was a little strange. Like,
I think I agree with that. I was actually thinking that. I think the Libertarian Party could have ran with that, and I think they could have gained a lot of support at the time.
Yeah. Why were they afraid of leftists?
The higher ups in the Libertarian Party must be compromised in some way. It's the only answer that makes any sense.
I also believe that it would be based and smart if Angela McArdle purposely ran a horrible candidate this year because she knew that she could get in Trump's ear about Ross. Honestly, I would respect that.
Well, I to be honest, what was the conversation?
That is a theory.
Yeah.
Michael Rechtenwald is a complete clown.
Oh, really?
Oh, I can't stand him.
I've only ever seen him on one thing, and to be honest, it was somewhat spiritual.
He fumbled over because he needed to take edibles.
Yeah, that's
just
crazy.
Grow up, dude.
That was
grow up, dude.
That was like a shocking thing that he lost because his speech was so bad just because he took edibles randomly at the last moment. That is like, I can't believe you would accidentally do that, but everything I've heard from him was good.
Breakdown after losing.
Oh, really?
So yeah, he was like crying. He was legitimately crying after he lost. And I was there like during the convention, and just the whole thing. It was like a clown show, and then everyone was there to see Trump, and then RFK was. It was complete. I think they went against what the Libertarian Party is about, and it was. I just think it's managed horribly. Whatever, Angela, she's terrible, and people are just. I don't know. I think the Libertarian Party, it had its heyday for a little bit. It gained traction, and now it's a dumpster fire.
Yeah, I just don't see how you're gonna fix the problems that politics made with more politics.
Yeah. Anything else, Creighton?
No, that's all I had.
Thank you so much for the call. We do have another caller on the line. Sarah in New Mexico, you're on Free Talk Live. I'm sure you want to talk about voting too, don't you, Sarah?
Well, I just want to say that Kamala, she's going to be on the Saturday Night Live tonight, I think. And they're going to make her do silly things, but they're kind of friendly towards her. It's a New York show. So I think
they're
going to
make her do silly things? Like, is she remote controlled?
It's a comedy, right? So, but she's going to be doing silly things, but it's not going to hurt her campaign. She's going to be a comedian, but it's going to be to win people's votes.
Oh, geez, I'm almost tempted to watch this.
Yeah.
Her trying to be funny.
That's
good luck.
Hilarious and crazy that she would choose to go on that and ignore Joe Rogan.
Well, I don't know. I remember Al Gore was on Saturday Night Live, and he winded up kissing his wife on the show, and they had him doing silly things a long time ago.
No, Al Gore won.
Oh wait, Al Gore won?
Yeah, and then they took it back.
Oh, I see. I see what you're
But
saying. I
yeah,
do
they
remember
called him
hearing that.
president.
Yeah, they did.
He was actually president for a second.
That's so weird. I forgot that happened. I thought it was just something like, I don't know, like a recount. Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Oh, the Florida. Remember the Florida? They screwed up that one county with the, what is it, pregnant Chad or something? Or
The hanging chads.
Pregnant
yeah, the
Chad?
hanging Chad, the pregnant Chad, and then we had that. Yeah.
I don't know what this is.
Yeah, it was a thing.
Well,
Especially since
they
Chad
screwed up the
means like a.
machine.
Yeah, well, they said, oh, look, we recounted it. It's actually Bush that won. But later, and there was no course correction for it, later it came out that there were like thousands of people on those rolls that shouldn't have been there. Dead people,
Wow.
non-Americans, children. There's just all kinds of names that shouldn't have been there.
They probably just
Oh, they
had
have
to
those
have
machines
a
where you,
neocon for the war they were planning.
Well, the machine was you have to pull a lever and it punches the holes in the ballot.
That's awful.
So the machine was rigged. So some of them was like a pregnant Chad and a hanging Chad. They were saying that it did not punch clearly. We have those electronic reader machines now where they scan it. But at that time, they had those things that you pull a lever. That's what they had, those machines. But it was told that they were planning to mess up that county. That was a make it or break it county for the Florida. And that's how they set it up. And that was it. The Secretary of State was a woman. They blamed the woman, and obviously they felt sorry for her. And then she just got off of it.
Yeah, they've come up with much more sophisticated ways to rig it now. It's not broken, it's fixed. It's a total fix.
Well, I kind of believe that Kamala wouldn't go on Joe Rogan because she truly just couldn't do as well as Trump. I really believe that. Like, I don't think she has actual thoughts in her head to be able to talk for 2 hours and make any sense.
No, I'm sure she would have bombed horribly.
Yeah, so...
Well, who is the Rogan? Isn't he a Republican?
No. He's not.
Well, do you think he's a neutral party? Sometimes they get him up there to just butcher her.
I think that he's supposedly right now like the most popular podcaster in the world. He's definitely not a Republican, probably not a Democrat either, though. He's like an independent, and I think he would be able to be neutral because that's kind of his job. He's a really good interviewer. When I was listening to his Trump one, I just barely haven't finished it. I listened to most of it. There were multiple times when I was like, wow, what a good question. Like he was trying to like pin Trump on stuff. Trump was just like evading a lot of it. But the thing was like Trump was coherent the whole time instead of being like Joe Biden absolutely could never do that. Like he's just simply too old. And then Kamala, I think that she doesn't have any of her own thoughts in her head. Like one of the interviews she did recently, she like took off for 2 days to study for. That's crazy. So I don't think she could do it. I think she's just a puppet more than any of them are normally ever puppets. Maybe the same amount as Joe Biden, and both of them two were like the two most puppety puppets that they've ever had for running for office.
She can go on a sex show, though.
Oh yeah, she went on Call Her Daddy, and that's so weird.
That's insane.
They didn't talk sex as far as I've heard, but like it was just like a different episode, sort of.
Yeah. I think they've taken that episode down.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't watch it actually. Thank you for the call, Sarah. We have another caller on the line. Unscreened caller, you're on Free Talk Live. What's on your mind?
Just trying to talk about Kamala also.
Go ahead. What's on your mind?
What do you think about her all of a sudden stop playing the identity politics game?
I didn't necessarily notice that. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, when she first started, she was, African-American woman running for president now. She hasn't mentioned that in about a month or so. All of a sudden she dropped that identity. It's like,
well, there's
I believe she's getting called out on it, and I think she's, I think she's getting called out on it.
Well, there's a big
She's
thing
not
with
quite what she appears to be or what she says she is.
Well, there's a big thing with there's that podcaster, the one who got kicked off of Daily Wire. What's her name?
Is it Candace Owens?
Candace Owens, yeah.
Candace Owens.
She's doing a whole series on Kamala's background, which is pretty interesting.
I saw part of it.
Yeah.
I think she's made a really compelling point that Kamala Harris may not be black. And I didn't expect that. I thought Republicans were being really hyperbolic when they were saying like she's not really black. I was like, she looks like she could be part black to me, but
maybe
there's a older woman named Dorothy who was friends with or like was a worker for Kamala's
Beryl.
dad. And no, she was friends with Beryl.
Oh,
so,
okay, yeah.
Well, she knew Beryl personally. Beryl is Kamala Harris's grandmother, who is supposed to be like where her black side comes from. Like Kamala Harris's grandmother was supposedly black, and that makes her dad at least part black, which makes her at least part black. Well, this woman, Dorothy, saw the picture that Kamala purports is Beryl in her book.
And it
It's
was
like
a
a black
worker.
lady. And Dorothy said, no, that's not Beryl. That's not Beryl. I've never seen that woman. But Beryl was a fair-skinned woman or a light-skinned woman or something like that. And she said she looked like she was Irish. Would you ever see a person that looks like a black person and say, oh, they look Irish to me? Like that's
No, there's no way.
not likely.
Not even close.
And it is interesting. Like I know Candace Owens goes into the goes in the weeds a little bit, but I mean I've been kind of into her podcasts about Kamala Harris's, where she comes from and who she really is. I mean, what is this whole thing? If she's not black, I think that's pretty relevant.
I only think it's relevant because she's used it for so long as like vote for me because I'm black, and that is so cringy, and that's honestly like what a disrespectful thing to do to people, to lie to them about your race just to get them to vote for you because they identify with you. That's what a thing to do, to use a picture of a black lady that apparently was just a worker for her family and claim that that's your great grandma. That's like using a token black person in a movie times a million, you know? That's crazy.
And I'm surprised this isn't a bigger thing
I
with
know.
black people.
I'm surprised it's not a bigger thing with like everyone.
Yeah.
So
I don't think many people actually know about it.
No, I don't think
I think
people.
the mainstream does a pretty good job of covering it up, and
I think
That's a
you're
good
right.
point.
or hiding
And
the fact
people
that,
just choose
they
not to
don't
look
talk
at
Oh,
about
it.
it much. Yeah.
a lot of the times,
Yeah,
and
they automatically assume Candace Owens said it, so she's labeled as a right-wing conspiracy.
I was going to
conspiracist,
say
so,
basically exactly that. Thank you for the call, and is an interesting thing to bring up. I was going to say exactly that, basically that a lot of the times I will even see something by someone that have been written off, like Alex Jones or Candace Owens. I'll see them claim a thing, and I'm more skeptical about it than other places. I'll like wait till I see it somewhere else before I believe it's true. I hate to say it, and I think that lots of people do the same thing. But I watched this whole video, which I normally don't do with Candace Owens, because for the most part, she does like. The reason she kind of like makes herself seem not trustworthy to me is just because of all of these things she like worries herself about, are mostly like these like culture war things for the most part, and I don't usually agree with her on most things. But this was pretty compelling, and I totally understand if I was Candace Owens, like a black woman, wanting to bring this to people's attention. Like, hey, if you want to vote for this person just simply because you think she'll represent me better, this person's using the image of some black lady to pretend she's part of, like, this group. That is crazy.
It's blackface.
That's psychopathic. And it's blackface. It's like a minstrel show.
100%, yeah.
That's seriously, like, psychopathic stuff. And all these politicians do anything like that. One thing that was so weird about Trump in the interview with Joe Rogan, for the most part, I just enjoyed it. Just like enjoyed listening to their conversation. But one thing I found really weird was he kept mentioning all these times where he'd say something about someone being dishonest. Like he said that like all these politicians in Congress, they're dishonest. And then he'd say something along the lines of, well, I can't blame them for it. They want to make money. And I'm just like, why would you say that?
Well, at least he's honest.
He's being honest about the fact that he would be dishonest for money.
Yeah.
That's weird. So yeah, I found those little
I think people
slips.
like those kind of things though, because they like how he's just not polished and but the thing is, I mean, is it all a psyop? Everything's a psyop.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is everything a psyop? That's
It might be. Everything might actually be a psyop.
I agree.
It's always possible. It's been Free Talk Live. You can go to freetalklive.com for more. Sorry that was the end of tonight's show if you were just calling in. Call in earlier tomorrow. That's 603-283-6160 for tomorrow and freetalklive.com for more from us. Have a good night. Thanks for listening and peace.
On Free Talk Live, we're bringing people to the ideas of liberty every day. From wrestling superstars like Glenn Jacobs.
You guys really are having an impact, I believe. Like I said, a lot of where I am now is due to listening to Free Talk Live. You changed my mind on some very important issues years ago.
To random people tuning in on the radio.
I was kind of stuck in the left-right paradigm. I heard your show by chance on a Saturday night. From there, I went on, joined the Free State Project, and become an amplifier. So,